Good morning. May I request Mr. Bail, Economic Advisor, Ministry of Government, Urban Development, Government of India, and all the panelists to kindly join the panel. It's going to be a long panel. May I request other panelists, Mr. Bhattacharjee, others to join. There'll be French and Spanish language translation, so headsets are available in case you need. Let me introduce myself. My name is Srinivas Chari. I'm the Director of the Urban Program at the Administrative Staff College of India, one of the knowledge partners for this Metropolis event led by Government of Telangana and GHMC and Metropolis. I would be basically facilitating. We had a very interesting discussion on smart cities yesterday. There was a very exciting discussions, exciting points. The discussion was more on the framework, looking at global issues, local actions. But today the focus of our deliberation would be on the Smart City Program of India, 100 Smart City Program of India, in fact announced by Honorable Finance Minister in the budget speech, articulated by Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi on a number of occasions. So the focus of today's deliberation would be on 100 Smart City Program of India and what sort of partnerships, what sort of knowledge, what sort of wisdom, what sort of cooperations that can emerge in this particular agenda of Government of India. What is the role of private sector, what is the role of civil society, what is the role of governments, what sort of financing mechanism we need to have in order to realize this vision of 100 Smart City Program of India. And that's the focus of today's deliberation would be. We have a very, very illustrious panel here. I'm going to go through the panel, introduce the panel members not in one go but in sequence, rather than introducing the whole panel and take out the time. I was allotted 10 minutes. I'm not going to do that because we're already late. We straight away go to the discussion. May I now invite Mr. Bell, who is an economic advisor. In fact, he is anchoring the Smart City Program. I heard him in a number of occasions and I was a part of the ministry's deliberations, and he is very passionate about the whole Smart City Program. In fact, Mr. Bell would set the context for the Smart City Program of Government of India, and then we would take up the key speakers as defined in the agenda. In fact, I would like to welcome all the dignitaries on the dais. We have very, very illustrious personalities. We have Mr. Anthony Vives, Deputy Mayor, Barcelona. I met him at 22. And he championed this smart city zone in Barcelona. We have Mr. Anil Menon, Dr. Anil Menon. We have Mr. Tony Newling. And we have a number of other very illustrious speakers. We have Dr. Ashwin Mahesh here. So, as you know, I'm not going to read out all the names, but I'm just introducing. I will introduce one by one later. I would like to welcome all the delegates and participants who had come here to clarify many issues regarding 100 Smart City Program. Without wasting too much time, may I now invite Mr. Bell to start the session. Sir, you can speak from there or you can come here, whichever is. I think it will be better from here. Thank you very much. Let's start with a big round of applause.
Respected colleagues on the dais and dear friends, I must say it's a great pleasure and a surprise for me to come and address this session, because I came in just to sit in the rows and to listen to the deliberations, but Srinivas suddenly tells me my colleague from office, Mr. Khaitan, the Joint Secretary, he couldn't make it because of, we have a parliamentary committee meeting, so I'm chipping in. And as Srinivas tells me, that's a very good example of smartness, seamless interoperability. So Khaitan is not there, Anand Bhal comes in. So you see the Ministry of Urban Development, where we work and where we emphasize smartness, is sort of walking the talk. All right, so let me take you through the thinking as in the Ministry of Urban Development on smart cities. We've got the technical experts here. We've got people from all kinds of technical institutions and places, and I'm sure they'll come up with the correct analysis and perspective. What I'll do is, having been sitting on the sort of Ministry of Urban Development seat, I'll take you through what Ministry of Urban Development has been doing and thinking about smart cities. So let's start from the beginning. So the new government, when it came in, it was part of their manifesto that we'll have 100 new smart cities. When they came to power, we told them it's not possible to make new smart cities. We have to make our cities smart. So the emphasis was not on building new greenfield smart cities, it was to make our brownfield cities smart. And they very graciously accepted the fact. So, as a lot of you will be aware, this program of 100 smart cities has sort of been delineated and nuanced. So they're going to be, what are these 100 smart cities? You know, the broad sort of template which has been fixed is those about 8 or 9 metro cities are there, the satellite towns around those smart cities, then cities with a population between 1 to 4 million, then some cities which are heritage, sort of heritage architecture and stuff, and then the capitals and all. So this is the broad sort of template on which finally the states will decide which are the cities they are choosing. Anyway, so let me take you through what's happening in the ministry. So as part of the learning and churning in the Ministry of Urban Development, we've been interacting with the best minds in the game. So be it IBM with their global sort of works and networks and their lab in Vasant Kunj, or be it Goldman Sachs, or be it McKinsey, be it Accenture. So all these multinationals have come in and made their presentations. There's been a lot of churning in the system. A lot of domestic companies have also came and made presentations. On an average, I must say in the last 15 days, we listened to 1 or 2 presentations almost on a daily basis, including on Saturdays. Even on Gandhiji's birthday, which was to be the launch of the National Swachh Mission, we had another presentation. So presentations and discussions. And of course, now the concept paper on the smart cities has been put up on the ministry website also. Some of you might have seen it. It's called indiansmartcities.org, Srinivas. And if you haven't, I would suggest you take a look at it. Because as things would go, they say the core of smart cities, stakeholder, citizen participation. So crowdsourcing and social networking and all these tools are very much part of the sort of package, and we all, and there's huge pressure right from the top on all of us to sort of be much more transparent, be much more accountable, and try and get as much ideas as from the public as possible. So I'm here also more as a listener, to listen to all the esteemed delegates on the panel, and to listen to people in the audience. And you can take it for granted, we'll be taking down our notes, and we'll be all putting it together, and we'll putting it up to our minister and secretary. Our minister was here in the inaugural. Our secretary is here coming tomorrow. And we are very happy and we are very keen to be associated with the Smart City initiative here. So what is a smart city? Let me just go through. You know, I can just wake up in the night and tell you what a smart city is. So smart city is a means to an end, means to certain ends. It's a process. You have to customize smart cities. Smart city is just a fad. After smart city, you've got, you know, resilient cities, future cities, flexible cities. So don't go by the term smart cities. Go by what your cities will finally deliver, which is good governance with the citizen at the center. And all right, the technological thing is, if I may use the economist says, use of, what is smart cities? The essence of smart cities is use of IT and digital data to improve the efficiencies in the system. But we all agree that it's not just the technological perspective that we are looking for. Our version of smart cities is much wider. So it has the citizen in the sort of at the core, both in designing what a smart city should be and how it should be done, and then, you know, developing all the infrastructure around it. So if you look at our concept paper, you've got the physical infrastructure, the social, the economic, and what have you. All those infrastructures have to be in place, 24/7 water supply, electricity, Wi-Fi networking, and things like that. And how do we go about it? All that's there in the concept paper. Use of green technology, use of PPPs, use of sort of, you know, what is seamless interoperability, using command and control center, all this stuff which you'll hear about in much more detail from our esteemed speakers. So let me leave you at that, just to assure you that in the ministry and the Urban Development Ministry, we are all eyes and ears. I'm also the Facebook and the Twitter manager of the Ministry of Urban Development website. Whatever suggestions you have to give, kindly give it to us on the website, and we'll sort of respond to it. And I'm very grateful to Srinivas Chari for calling me. Actually, he knows much more about smart cities than me. In fact, they say about smart cities in the ministry is, between Srinivas and me, we know all about smart cities. He knows all that is to be known, and I know the rest. Thank you.
Just for the benefit of all the audience, the base paper on Smart City of 100 Smart City program of Government of India, as Mr. Bell said, is already on the website. It's been there for the last 20 days or so. They have clearly defined the definition. They also define the indicators of success. As he said, the centrality is citizen engagement. The centrality is about service delivery. It's not just about Wi-Fi enabling a particular zone or a city as a whole. It's about service delivery. It's about citizen engagement. It is about governance. But as he said, the smart city definition of Government of India goes much beyond technology. It is also about service delivery and community engagement and part of the good governance. So I rightly said. Thank you very much, sir. In fact, we would be seeking ideas not only from the panel but also from the audience. Everything is recorded and we will pass on to the ministry as a part of this deliberation. Now it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Anthony Rives. He is Deputy Mayor, Barcelona. He is a champion. I would say Barcelona is one of the smart cities rated in the world. If you see 100 smart cities, Barcelona comes on the top. And he is a champion, and it's an honor to have him here to speak to us. He has been a civil, he was a part of the Barcelona City Council, and he has held a number of positions in the private sector and in the civic body, so he understands all the aspects of governance, particularly with regard to smart city. Those who have been to Barcelona would know Act 22 zone, which is a smart city zone, which has been a showcase for Barcelona, has attracted enormous attention. In fact, I took almost like 150 civil servants and policymakers to that particular zone, and there was an enormous amount of excitement on that. Thank you very much, sir, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much for your words. The truth is that we are only champions in soccer, in football. The rest, you can applaud FC Barcelona. Of course you have to. I'm going to show you something. This is my Visa card. And you don't see it, but this is FC Barcelona Visa card. So this is the only important thing I wear right close to my heart. Well, I'm here to talk about smart cities, but as you see in the presentation that I have to show you, if you hang it here on the wall, I don't know how to hang it, you're going to read Barcelona towards the social dream. Because, no. It's here, the presentation is here. Yeah. Because from our perspective, smart cities are not about technology. Smart cities have to be, as the Secretary said, about people. I don't know how to put the presentation. Does it work? Okay. First of all, now. First of all, some figures about Barcelona. Barcelona is the capital of a region called Catalonia, right in the south of Europe. Compared to you see the differences are huge. So when we come here, the first thing that I want to tell you is that we have to be very humble. India is a blossoming, not nation, is a blossoming culture, civilization. You don't know what you have in your hands. You have the most thrilling society all over the earth, the biggest democracy in the world. So please, I think that you have to be very proud of what you're doing in this country, and that's why we come here to learn from you. The second thing I want to tell you is that before talking about technology, we have to make a little bit of literature. In fact, I'm a writer. Even though I've been working in the private sector, in the automotive industry for a long time, even though I've been a civil servant, a politician, I am an elected member of the body of politicians of my country, I'm a writer, I'm an author. And I think that we have to put visions to what we do. Otherwise, what's the purpose of becoming a politician? A politician is the guy that steps forward and says, hey India, hey Hyderabad, hey Telangana, I think that this is the good way to go. So we've been working with several visions in Europe at least. This is on your left-hand side, the vision of Barcelona, which was built 150 years ago, the vision of Le Corbusier in France, etc. But then these visions, these dreams become real ideas, and ideas then become history, and we are here to make history. That's the history of Barcelona. This is Barcelona. This is right in the center of Barcelona. This is a kind of cellular space in which the city has grown, very compact. That's what's comparable to you, with lots of people living together. And we want to work on the concept of the welfare city. Welfare city is a place in which we generate employment. We cover the basic needs. We work for human development, whilst the national level is working for the GDP, the taxation, and things like that, which are important, most of the times are a bit disturbing, but we as cities have to work for direct services, and that's what social smart city and the welfare city stands for. That's why we talk about that we have to leave a legacy to our children, and that's why we talk about the social dream that Barcelona is and wants to become, and the social dream that India and Hyderabad and Telangana have to be, and the rest of the cities of India. Though we have to improve, and you're going to see how we try to improve. We think that in this global crisis that we're going through, there are several ways, several paths, several hints that we have to follow. Productive cities at the human scale, inclusive cities, cities of parks and open spaces, cities that consume the energy that produce. This is strategical. And when you see the situation in which the world is right now, and when you analyze the geostrategical difficulties we're going through, you're going to discover that distributed production of energy, which means each building produces the energy that it consumes, is going to become a key issue and a job creator. Listen to what I tell you. It's going to be like this, and we, cities and countries, have to bet for that. Barcelona, in 40 years' time, is going to produce all the energy that we consume. Barcelona is already, you're going to see it now in a minute, Barcelona is already producing all the energy that the public facilities consume. How? Through generating energy, taking advantage of our waste management. You're going to see it later. As we are in India, we generated a mantra. Otherwise, I couldn't be here. Our mantra is the one you have in here in the screen. We want Barcelona to become a city formed by productive and self-sufficient neighborhoods at a human speed inside a high-speed, hyper-connected, eco-efficient metropolis. Many slow cities inside a smart city. That's our vision. By the way, this is a vision that we want to share with the rest of the cities of the world, with the rest of the cities of India. This is what we call the map of the treasure. I won't go through this. You're going to have this. I can come to India. We can talk about this. In here, you have the anatomy of any city in the world. If we work with this anatomy, all of us, we're going to improve the level of services and the quality of life of our citizenship. Some examples of what we're doing in Barcelona. Productive city at a human scale. First of all, participation. Or you do it with the people, or you won't do it. Please put the citizens at the beginning of the definition of the services. Forget the techies, forget the technologists, forget everyone. Put plain people defining what the principles are, because people have the good ideas. We also have good ideas. We have to share them and work together. That's what we are trying to do in Barcelona, generating a kind of think tank that's going to work bottom up to generate the best public space that you can imagine. So we work from the participation to the generation of high-quality public space. See, I'm not talking about technology yet. Technology is going to come later. Details then become very important. This is a very nice experience. We put these hammocks in the center of Barcelona, run by disabled people, run by mentally disabled people, just to test what people were asking us about. It used to be a very hard zone. We put the hammocks, all of a sudden, that public space became much better. This is another very good example. This used to be the coverage of a very hard infrastructure right in the center of Barcelona. Good design attracts people, no technology, just people thinking with the citizenship. Another very good example. This used to be a corridor, a corner of Barcelona. Look how it looks now. It's easy. It seems easy. You have to listen to the people. Barcelona is a very nice place, but we have horrendous corners. You can't imagine how Barcelona... How many of you have been to Barcelona in this place? Lots of people. How many like the beach in Barcelona? Most of you. 25 years ago, the beaches that you know Barcelona used to be slums, like the ones that you find in Mumbai. Okay? So it's through good design that you can change the life of the people. It is through good design that you change a derelict into a very high-quality public space. It is through make people understand that even when you are working in the public space, meanwhile you are producing the public space, you can make people sneak into the public space and understand how it works. And then is when you discover that technology, rather than being just something that you put on the city, technology can be embedded in the city towards the citizens to improve their quality of life also. So forget about the administration, forget about the back desk, forget about what's happening in your machine, in your bureaucratic machine. Think about this woman in here trying to understand what's going on around. Think about the bus stop, think about the lighting, think about where she want to go. That's what you have to think about, and that's how we work with the companies that are hiring us. By the way, we cities have to become clients, my friends. We've been the dog being walked by the tail of the industry. When I'm sitting in my office in Barcelona, if I ask, I want some techie companies visiting me, my door falls over my desk. Hundreds of companies selling to me bracelets, mirrors, bed sheets, everything but what I need for the city. The reason why it happened, it was because we didn't have a real idea that smart cities had, as the Secretary said, had to become a social dream, had to become a part of that social dream. It changed. There are very wise companies, I'm not talking, and there's a company sitting here with us, which is Cisco, that understood that they had to work with us in order to develop the services. There are some others. Schneider is a very common, Philips is working with us also. But they understood that they have to go at the beginning of the process, not selling us bracelets and mirrors, but building the services that we need. I'm gonna, yes, this one. See then what happens. A bus stop becomes a place in which you have all the services that you can imagine. And then a lamppost also becomes a place in which you centralize the service of, you make light, you put sensors, you put devices that give security to people, and all in a single lamppost, okay? These are the things that we're doing everywhere, working on what we call the inclusive city. See, this used to be a factory, but those factories nowadays are being transformed into what we call ateneums of fabrication, places in which people, these are civic services, civic premises, in which people learn to work on 3D printing and the new way of producing things. This is an old factory, and you're going to see a very nice experience in here that we develop with children. By the way, you people from India, you have one of the best educational systems in the world, devoted to children. We want to learn from you. We're trying to do things like this, in which thousands of families come around and start producing things with 3D printers. We even teach them how to produce a 3D printer. So people go out of these premises, which are public, having produced their own 3D printer. There are many things that we can do together, provided that we understand that the future of the world is related to new ways of production, new ways of interaction amongst city and citizenship, and the other way around. We work also you've been talking about 22 watt. 22 watt is a very good old idea. We've made a step forward, also together with companies such as Cisco, Schneider, and some others. We are changing the old premises, and this is a real case. What you're seeing here, the Barcelona Smart City campus, is going to become the Cisco, the Schneider, the Philips World Research Center related to smart cities. So these places can be changed in order to produce services to people. Another very important thing, you have to grab what your cities are. This is a Barcelona experience. We have wonderful markets in Barcelona. This is a map of the markets that we have. So you know what we did? Rather than letting them fall apart, we have invested public money in these markets. So these markets have become milestones, or I would say cornerstones of our social project. And you see the markets have a kind of blossomed again into places that attract people and attract services. Another very important thing, analyze your current industrial structure, because most of the time, and I've been walking around, I'm seeing your sari production, your textile production, for example. Don't throw it away. Do not think that this is a matter of the past. It happened in Barcelona with our port activity. In a certain way, we thought, okay, it is important, but you know, no. We've generated the most important nautical cluster of the world because we understood that there were, my English, where you repair shipyards. We had very old shipyards, but then we discovered that there were a bunch of entrepreneurs that wanted to put those shipyards again into work, and they had an ambition. They wanted to become the first of the world. Okay, you guys, you want to become the first of the world in the world of technology, don't you? And you're doing it, so bet for it. Each city has to do that, not only this one. Each city has to do that. And we did it, and you can do that if there's a formal cooperation between university, city, entrepreneurs, and we all confirm through a very good law scheme, juridical scheme, that you can go for it. And we are doing it. This is a good example. Affordable housing, my friends. Key issue, absolutely key. Very important for us. You know why? Apart, you have to generate a roof, social roof, affordable roof for everybody. And that's why we are not selling real estate anymore. We are buying real estate in Barcelona and the metropolitan area. We're buying real estate, and we want people to live inside slow cities, means people working by where they live or living by where they work. No more traffic jams. We want people to walk. And then another very important thing, each $1 million that you invest in rehabilitation generate, at least in Europe, 35 jobs by million. And everybody knows that India is full of millions. So you can generate hundreds of thousands of jobs related to rehab. But forget about rehab looking backwards with the rear mirror. Rehab has to become another place in which you embed technology, because technology is going to provide you better energy infrastructure, better heat infrastructure, better cooling infrastructure. That's what you have to think about. City of parks and open spaces. See this one. See this one. I'm fed up of car junctions. I'm fed up of cars. At least the ones that make noise and the ones that pollute. That's why we're betting for electrical vehicles. But we're tearing down the flyovers in Barcelona. See this video. It's a very short one. That's what we are doing in Barcelona. This is right in the center of Barcelona. We are transforming what used to be the biggest car junction of Barcelona, this being the work of the last year, into the biggest park of Barcelona. We're getting rid of the cars. We want to put the cars outside of the city. We have diminished the amount of vehicles in 3 years by 25%, and no one complained. And you can do the same thing. Yes, you can applaud. Yeah. Yeah. Because that old car junction is that hole, that Greek hole that you see, is going to become the center of our green diagonals and the green lines that we're building in our city. The connection also with the mountain, very important for us, with projects that again go back to that definition of public space. That production of energy, now this is the current model. The new model is going to become more or less like this. Housing producing, each block producing the energy that we need. These are real projects in Barcelona. We work with a new system of lighting. We are generating, for example, if you come to Barcelona, you're going to see it. We're generating all the energy that we need for the public parks. We can do that together all over the world. You have very good technology. You have to help us. And I think that we can help you in defining the way in which we do it. Another very important thing, I told you before, the waste treatment plant. You know what? We generate, as I told you before, all the energy that we need for the public premises in Barcelona. Our aim is jumping to all the energy that we need for the whole city of Barcelona. Sewer system management, also very important. This is Barcelona when I was not a kid. It's when I got married, 1988. Yes, I got married. It didn't rain like this. It rained in the face of my mother-in-law. She wasn't happy. She's still not happy with me. And we discovered that we had to make investments in order to get rid of the floods. And these are the churches that we are building in Barcelona. You see the tiny man over there? So we're building huge water tanks that are recollecting all the water flooding from the mountains that surround Barcelona, and we haven't had any more floods in the city. And we use this water in order to water our parks, in order to bring it back to the industry. So these are things that we want to work on. We manage it through the technology that companies like Cisco are providing us with. And then the jewel of the crown, because we've been talking about big things, parks, water floods, flyovers, tearing down flyovers. But you see what, this is the hand, this could be the hand of my mother. And you see that button that this lady is wearing? This is teleassistance. There are no elderly in Barcelona living alone that haven't got this button. When they push it, when they press it, someone is going to take care of them. It's a civil servant. But we thought, okay, it's nice, it works, people are very happy, but we are not taking advantage of the technological solution. So what we did was considering the universe of someone, let's say, 80 years old, 85 years old, living alone. Perhaps he hasn't got relatives, but he has neighbors, or he or she have friends in the grocery store, or at the butcher's, or the flower shop. Why don't we put them all together? Why don't we link them all? And that's when we generated what we call the Bond project. And the Bond project has to be based on new technology. This is pure smart city for us. Smart cities in the poles, in the lighting poles, very important, nice. Good to come to Hyderabad and talk about that. But what I'm proud to talk about is this. By the way, this is a project that provided us with the Bloomberg Prize to the best project in the world related to smart cities. So people are, we got $5 million, 5 million euros, which is not bad for the project. But these are the projects that we have to work on, and this has derivatives. We are working on a project like this for unemployed people or for school drop-offs. We all need people to live with people. That's the real purpose of a smart city. We work, of course, as I told you before, in an integrated service network, which is remotely managed. And this is another key slide. You see the savings that we have. 58 million per year on smart water management. Parking revenues increased $50 million. Job generation. These are the figures that really stand, that really back our bet for the social smart city. These are the experiences that we have to build together because we know who we are. Barcelona is a small city in a corner of Europe. We are from the south of Europe, a disaster. South of Europe is a disaster. So that's why we need you Indians to work with. We need the Indian cities to work with. Otherwise, we're too tiny, we're too small. That's why we want to work with you. The last video, if you allow me. For you to understand that people who have teleassistants, in a way, they are suffering from the old methodology. People try to have an aid, the aid doesn't come, so what we try to do is making people understand that new technologies, that the embedded smart cities, embedding smart cities in our daily life is going to improve the life of this guy, who's an ambulance driver, that is not able to reach the old lady's house because he hasn't got the information enough to arrive to that point because there are public works over there. That is why we work in technologies that allow us to predict situations and allow us to react. This is what happened in the old days. This is the famous cholera map of John Snow's in London. That is the first big data recollection that allowed London to get rid of the cholera epidemic 1,050 years ago. This is the way of recollecting data. We have to work on it together. That's what you need in order to improve the information that you have about your own cities. The last one. Our goal, ladies and gentlemen, is working with you. We want to work with your blossoming country, with your blossoming cities. We care about people. I've heard the secretary, I've heard everybody. It's my second time in India. I was 9 months ago in Mumbai and Delhi talking to lots of people. We share the same vision. We share the social dream based on improving the well-being and the quality of life of our people. Spain used to be a very poor country only 60 years ago. We are a country full of difficulties, but we are a country that wants to work with people, understanding that the real aim are people. That's why we want to build welfare cities. That's why we still believe in the social elevator, things that would not mean anything in other parts of the world, but you know what it means in here. You know what it means, like we do understand what it means in Barcelona. We want to leave a legacy to our future generations, and we cannot do that without you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will take questions after a couple of more presentations. Thank you very much, sir. I'm sure many of us have many interesting questions to ask and also seek clarifications. Particularly some of the initiatives that they have led have great relevance for India. One of the fascinating initiatives that I feel that all the metro cities in India can straight away implement, which I'm trying to push, is a flood management system that they have introduced. As some of us know, Barcelona went through a series of flooding prior to probably the Olympics, and they could address the problem of flooding by introducing a very interesting innovative catchment system, as you saw in one of the pictures. So we now invite another illustrious speaker, Dr. Anil Manu, who is the President of Smart and Connected Communities and Deputy CGO, Chief Globalization Officer at Cisco. In fact, Dr. Anil used to talk about smart city, I don't know for how many years, when nobody used to talk about smart cities. And when suddenly this smart city buzz has picked up and it's become part of our Indian dictionary. So I think Anil is the right person to talk about the evolution of smart city, particularly in the context of India. And he is well equipped to do that because he not only heads the Confederation of Indian Industry vertical on the smart city, but also he is the vice chair of the global agenda on smart city, and also is part of the World Economic Forum, which are the illustrious bodies. So he brings enormous experience to the table, and I now request Dr. Anil Manan to take us through. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. How many of you saw the 3-hour set and said, this is going to be very long? I know many of us on the dais said this is going to be long, but if you can listen to Tony, I can sit and listen to him for 3 hours. Let me first of all, thank you for having me here, Dr. Chari. This is an exciting thing for me, and I have been particularly impressed with the focus that the IT Secretary and the IT Ministry here has on smart cities and smart Telangana, smart Hyderabad, and we have been talking to them for quite some time. What I'm going to do is, yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember when we started this effort at Cisco, and before that I used to be at IBM. When I started this effort, we used to call it intelligent urbanization. And I remember Dr. Ravindra, who was sitting there, the former Chief Secretary of Karnataka, one day in his very, 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 very polite way, asked me, intelligent urbanization, Anil, what were we, stupid urbanization before this? So I went back to my team and I said, we got to change the name. We are really pissing off the bureaucrats. We can't do this. And that's how we came up with the term smart connected communities. I do want to pick that up because in India, in the Indian context, it has material. We don't talk about smart cities because especially in India, which has got 30% urbanization, and even if you get to the world average of 50% or 54% as it is now, and get to the 60%, which is where the world is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, we're talking about 300 to 500 million people moving into cities. And that is something that Indian cities can't afford in the infrastructure that we have. So we have to think about rural areas and tier 3, tier 4 areas, and how do you get smartness into the rural areas so there's less reason for them to be leaving rural areas and coming into larger cities, looking for healthcare, jobs, and other things. So what I'm going to do is, I do want to take a global perspective because I know many of the other participants here have a local perspective. And I know people like Ashwin Mahesh has been doing this way longer than even I have even thought about it. So I know you have some experts here who will talk about the kinds of things within an Indian context. But I do want to say a couple of things in my reaction, and I'm going to be very forceful if you don't mind. I hopefully have the permission to do so. I want to pick up on something that Deputy Mayor talked about. I do believe that in my experience, looking at over 150 to 200 of these city projects, over the last 5 years, I've traveled to 64 countries, many cities, many countries and cities, many times, like Barcelona and Seoul and Songdo and Chongqing and others, many times, 12, 13, 14, 15 times. There's a common thread to all the successful smart city projects. First, it is the citizens drive it, the citizens own it, and the politicians enable that. And there's a strong political will. That without that political will, you can talk about smart cities, nothing will happen because you have to make some very difficult decisions to get this thing done. So the first thing I would tell you here is that we need serious public-private partnerships and we need serious political will. The second one that I will bring up in the Indian context, because I've heard it so many times that it bothers me. I will hear things such as, you know, Barcelona is a rich city, they can afford to do that. Or London is a rich city, they can afford to do that. India is a poor city, we can't afford to do that. And my point is, I don't believe India is a poor country, nor is Hyderabad a poor city, or Bangalore or any other cities. I happen to believe that because India is an emerging country, it cannot afford not to do it. Because that's the only way to leapfrog. That's the only way to get ahead of the game. So I'm going to take a little different tack, and I'm going to say why this is a huge business opportunity, because the smart city is not about technology. It is about the soul of a country. It is about the soul of cities. Great cities are great because they have a soul. I was born in, I cringe when I say Mumbai, because I was born at a time and we still call it Bombay. So I still refuse to call it Bombay, except my friends insist that they won't talk to me unless I call it Mumbai. But Bombay, with all its problems, is a great city because it has vibrancy, it has soul. Mexico City is a wonderful city, and I love going to Mexico City because it's vibrant, it's got a soul. Sao Paulo has that. And so at the end of the day, we have to maintain the soul of a city, and we have to understand the soul of the city, and that's where the politicians and the others become very important to drive it. So what I'm going to do in my, and by the way, for the benefit of everyone else, I was told by Chari to take 30 minutes, so I'm not stealing your time. I hope you don't think that this guy cannot get off the stage. So I was very concerned when I started speaking that someone would say, this guy just keeps talking. And I do keep talking, but I do have the extra time that Dr. Chari has asked me to spend time. I do want to talk about smart cities in the context of India. India has succeeded in the first two waves of the digital economy. The first wave of the digital economy was the globalizing of the IT services industry. And it is companies here in Hyderabad and Cyberabad that actually started along with Bangalore. So today, almost 50 to 60% of all global exports are from these two cities, right? And Gurgaon being the next. So India did dominate. 30 plus years ago, let me tell you, many of you are young, but 30 plus years ago, if you went to a European company or an American company and said, I want to take your IT management system and run it out of India, they would have thrown you out of the office. Today, it's a normal way of doing business. The second wave of the digital economy was globalization of the engineering services industry. These two are multi-trillion-dollar industries. The largest industry has just emerged and is the globalization of urban services. City management, urban services, is now going to be a global industry that is going to be more than the other two industries combined. This is where, when we talk about smart cities in India, it is not just about censoring and putting digital technologies. It's thinking about how do I leverage what I'm building in cities for the economy that we can build that is going to be a global industry that can then generate the income to drive more smartness and more technologies into the city. That is my presentation. I want you to take a broad perspective, then we can work our way down to the 100 cities and the 200 cities and the 300 cities and the 600,000 villages that needs to become smarter. There are three trends where India can play a big role and why somebody like Tony Vives comes here, why the Mayor Trias comes here, is because of these three trends that I want to talk about. First one is a dramatic shift in the social demographic shifts that's taking place. The world is aging, it is shrinking, and it is hyper-growth in some parts, and it is patchy. It has implications for what we can do with smart cities. The second one is the economy, the urbanization, but also the fact that now more people are living in emerging countries than in developed countries. And by the way, the GDP. And the third one is the internet is now real, and it is mobile. It has become the fourth utility after water, power, and telco. You take these three, and smart cities is a foundation that reflects these three. And if you don't look at these three, we will never be able to invest in a smart city, whether it's Hyderabad or whether it is Bangalore or Chennai or any of the others. So let me just pick up this fact. The world is aging. The average age of 65 plus for the world today is 6.4. By 2050, which is just around the corner, 16%. But I want you to take a few countries. Take Netherlands. Today it's only 13%. By 2050, it'll be 26%. Take Japan. It's only 17%. But by the year 2050, almost 40% of Japan will be over the age of 65. You took like Singapore. Over 33% of Singapore will be over the age of 65. Then you look at the next slide, which is shrinking. Germany is going to shrink by 15%, while it is also 33% of Germany will be over the age of 65. How is Germany going to maintain its standard of living without having an economic productivity gains of 5 to 7%? That is their challenge. And that is the opportunity for the countries on the last slide, which includes India, which is going to grow 55% in population. Look at Saudi Arabia, which is going to be over 100% in population. And Pakistan, over 126%. So the growth has moved in population to some other areas, and the traditional developed countries are aging and shrinking. That's the age demographics. Now look at the economics. In 1820, India and China were the two largest economies in the world. US was only 1.8% of the world's GDP, and Spain was 1.9 in 1820. By 1999, India just drops off the list. US is 30% of the world's GDP is US. Spain has got 2%, still about the same as 1820. Then you look at 2010, US, Japan, China has moved up to 8.6. Now I want you to go to 2050. India and China will have over 50% of the world's GDP. And all the emerging countries, Mexico, Russia, Indonesia, Brazil, are in the top 10, and only 3 European countries will be in the top 10. The point is, in total size of GDP, the emerging countries are going to be big, but if you take a per capita GDP, none of these countries will be in the top 10. It'll still be Singapore, it'll still be Norway, it'll still be Spain, it'll still be Germany, it'll still be the US, which means we better come up with solutions that are affordable if a company like a Cisco needs to be around for the next 100 years. And we are thinking about the next 100 years. And an IBM for the next 100 years. So the question is, if a company out of Spain or the others, we better look at the tyranny of numbers, which is developing countries, is where the future is, that's where the economy is, and that's where the smartness are going to be. The next Google and the Amazon has to come from India. When over 20% of the Indian population is a teenager, why should not the next Facebook come out of India and the YouTube? So that's the point that we have to think about. So let me just take this. Here's the practical reality of 100 smart cities. 10,000 people are moving into cities at an hour, which means we have to create a London every month. All right? This is a practical reality of smart cities, which is why my eyes pop up saying, lots of money. But more exciting, if you don't do this, let's take India. 60% of India is under the age of 27, and India is getting younger. In 2050, 60% will be 24 years and younger. If these 24-year-old kids, 600 million of them, don't have a job, don't have good health, if they're suffering from diarrhea, they don't have access to health care, let me assure you, we have a disaster waiting to happen in this country, regardless of how many billionaires we're creating. So it's a social issue to become a smart city, which is why I push this point that this is not about technology. So whether it is in India, whether it is in Spain, whether it is in Malaysia, whether it is in Tanzania, the fact is there are fewer resources for the challenge. You've got sustainability issues. We got urban slums. When Mumbai has got 70% of the people technically living in a slum. We have concentrated urban poverty. We have increase in crime rates. We need solutions, and we don't have 100 years to create a city. We have a London to create every month. So the only way we can do is asking different questions. You cannot do the same thing again. So I'm going to ask you all a different question. What if you had unlimited computing? And I'm going to ask a technology question with the preface that technology is the least important of the challenges we have to focus. It is political and business model. But I will take a technology perspective and end with the 5 things we need in order to create smart cities in India. What if you had unlimited computing at a reasonable price? What if you had unlimited storage at a reasonable price? What if you had unlimited bandwidth at a reasonable price? What if everything was connected to everything? Would you do healthcare the same way again? Would you do education the same way again? Would you live your life the same way again? Would you run a city the same way again? So I want to give you some statistics. What if digital infrastructure is effective and affordable? Not the physical infrastructure of buildings and roads and ports and airports and highways, which is what we focus on. What if the digital infrastructure, which is what needs to be seamlessly integrated into the physical infrastructure, was effective and affordable? Here's some statistics. Computing from 1992 to 2012, a MIP has dropped from $222 to 6 cents, and today it is less than 2 cents. 1 gigabyte of storage has come down from $569 in 1992 to 2012 of 3 cents. Now it is free. By the way, this slide, this deck of 20 meg would have cost me $10 million of storage in 1956, 10 million. So it's that free today. What if bandwidth? Bandwidth, by the way, in India is still one of the highest, and we have to fix that now with 4G and LTE. Maybe it'll go on. But bandwidth has dropped. Here is the biggest thing. Today, there are 50 billion objects in the works happening in the next 5 years. By the way, I always ask this question. Do you know how many toothbrushes are sold in the world a year? Toothbrush in a year. 3.2 billion. Do you know how many cell phones are sold in a year? 6 billion. So there are some people sitting with no access to a toothbrush, rubbing their teeth with a cell phone in their hands. But do you realize the danger of that? There are people in villages in India and Africa who have access to information and the internet before they have access to clean water, to electricity, healthcare, and education. We have to fix that. That's what a smart, connected community is. Not about cities, but also rural areas. And all I want to bring up one is also, when you do that, we have sized the market. It's a $19 trillion opportunity out there. And of that, $5 trillion is on cities. How to transform cities is a $6 trillion opportunity. And this is where I think we should be creating entire new industries in India, made for India, within the cities, that goes after these. And I'll tell you what they are. I've already spoken to this, is $2 trillion. What does it mean? People, data, process things. There's a $1.9 trillion opportunity on apps. On education, it's a $300 billion opportunity. Why can't we, and this is already happening with Tudor Vistas of the world, $41 billion in smart parking is a number 2 to number 3 source of revenues for most cities except in India. Why should that be the case? $39 billion in water management. There's a company called Takadu that is based in Israel that is managing the water leakages and the water process management of Singapore. So no longer do you have to manage water within the city that you're working in. So remote monitoring can become an Indian new industry. So what questions would we ask? So I'm going to go through very quickly saying, ask different questions to create new industries. Why is there traffic? Not whether we should be building a highway. Why is there traffic? And when you ask that question, you will come up with a different thing. In Los Angeles, London, New York, Chicago, and the big cities, between the hours of 4 and 6, 50–60% of traffic is essentially people driving around looking for parking space. Well, if you can wire up all the parking lots and you can create an app, somebody can actually find where the parking space is closest to the place they want to go and actually do an auction and buy it. That's a new industry. No one has thought of it. So how do you make spaces smarter? I want to talk about this building. 70% of energy is in a city, used up in a city, and 60% to 50% of energy is in this commercial building. But in a typical building such as this, it's a new building, it's got 74 to 85 protocols that don't talk to each other. Lighting doesn't talk to fire, fire doesn't talk to elevators, elevators don't talk to HVAC system, and each of those may be smart by themselves, but they're not smart connected. This causes 30 to 40% of waste of energy in a building. Can you cut that down? So look at the number of industries in a typical building that don't talk to each other. By the way, India is perfect for this. How many of you are engineers here? I was not an engineer, but I remember growing up. First, you have to get into an IIT. Then the next question is, which IIT? Madras, oh, you're smart. Mumbai, ah. Then once you get into an IIT, which stream? Chemical engineering or civil? No, mechanical, oh, you're smart. Electrical, it means you're a little smarter. The point is, once you create those silos, what happens is that these engineers, civil engineers, are not talking to electrical engineers, they're not talking to mechanical engineers, and the buildings come up, which is why you see waste. Why do we need to go to a doctor when 80% of a typical doctor's visit, the doctor doesn't need to touch you? Why can't you digitize it and have it remotely done, which is what we do now in Cisco. All our employees are digitally monitored by doctors, and we do it. By the way, I'll give you another example. 2 million patients in ICUs in America are digitized, and they're monitored out of Chennai. 2 million patients in ICUs. It cuts back costs and creates jobs in Chennai. I'll give you one other example. Tanzania, the country of Tanzania, has 42 million people, the highest birth rate, the highest infant mortality for cardiac and for heart conditions, the highest in the world. But in the country of Tanzania, there's not one pediatric surgeon, not one pediatric pulmonologist, not one pediatric radiologist. So what did we do? We worked with somebody by the name of Sunita Maheshwari, who's a Yale returned professor, started a company in Bangalore called Teleradiology, hooks up the doctors in Tanzania with Bangalore doctors, and we are saving lives. Today, her company is ranked #1 in the US and with a valuation of over a couple of $1 billion. Asymmetry of skills and asymmetry of opportunities can be fixed with digital technologies. So we are saying, why not have doctors and teachers in cities train kids in villages, and all you need are 2–3 hours a week from each of the doctors in villages. You can do that. So this is the example. This is Samudaya in Karnataka that we have done. This is my favorite. How do we educate the next generations of surgeons, architects, and cellists, wherever they are? By the way, Korea spends 3% of the GDP on tutoring for math and English and science. 3% of the GDP. The highest paid teacher in Korea is an English teacher who makes $3 million. By the way, in India, parents will pay money to have access to somebody who can train the kids in French or German or English if they're sitting in London or sitting in the middle of Europe. Why can't you do that? It's a huge business opportunity. And I want to tell you what we have done with Hershey. Just one example. There are many more examples. You see, that is just a pilot. Kids in Hershey, Pennsylvania, among rich kids, we have wired them up with Ganya coffee plantations where the kids are working on the Ghana coffee plantation, and after they finish working on the coffee plantation, they go into a room and they take classes from the same teacher and they do joint projects in Hershey and in Ghana. I want to ask you a question. Do you think that small child, the blonde child sitting in Hershey, Pennsylvania, after 14 years of working and learning with a Ghanaian child, will ever look at an African child and say, that's a foreign person? Never. And would you think the child growing up in Ghana will think of themselves as less, not as educated, when they grew up with the child in Hershey, Pennsylvania, having access to the same kind of education? Why can't we do this at scale, but we don't have a business model for that? This is what we're doing in Korea, in Songdo. Kids are learning English, and it's teachers from Los Angeles and from Detroit who are training them, paying $10,000, $15,000 to get educated. All you need are 10 students, and you're making $1 million. So, or 150,000. This is how we solve problems with the asymmetries. Why do we have traffic? I've already talked about that. Why not censorize? And this is what we're doing in America by saying, why not we create an entire new stream of revenues by censorizing the parking lots and then having people pay for parking materials? This is something we are doing in Barcelona. Why does a garbage truck have to go to every garbage can when it's half empty? So we censorized it in Barcelona because it's a tourist city. When it's full, it sends a signal saying, come pick me up. If it's half full, don't pick me up, but I'm stinking, so come pick me up. That's what this is. Lights. Why do all the lights in a street light have to be at the same lumens? We should not be about lighting, it should be about lumens. And can you change the level of lumens based on the time of the day and the brightness of the day? You can change and save a ton of money. New York City spends $600 million a year on lighting. If I can save 10% of it, that's $60 million that can be reinvested into something else. This is what we are doing now, saying, rethink your entire question. And today, I hope you'll go down into the exhibition center because we're doing it in Telangana. We're saying, why do you need to go to City Hall? Why do you need to go to government? Let them come to you. So in Nice and Barcelona, we have put up these things in city halls and in shopping malls where you can go in and get your driver's license, you can get your birth certificate, land records. And by the way, not the most romantic thing, but in Nice, they actually have them getting married in these things. They don't have to go to City Hall for the marriage certificate. So why and how can they do? You have to get them to be integrated. It is all about cloud computing. It has to be at a low cost. It has to be affordable. It has to be scalable. And we have to rethink the way city is managed, the way cities are organized, and bring them together. And I know Mahesh, for example, Ashwin Mahesh has been doing this stuff with MapUnity and all the things that he's doing in Bangalore and nationwide. I think that there are experts in India. The problem we have in India is not that we don't have the technology or the smart people or the ability to do it. What we need is a true collaboration between public practice and private practice and academia and labor. Once you get that, then you will get this thing done. Otherwise, we're not going to do it. So all I want to do before I end is to say, this needs to be integrated seamlessly. It cannot be siloed. It cannot be in departments. It has to be an integrated idea or this will not work. So I'm going to end, Dr. Chari, by asking a simple question. I know I've been drinking this Kool-Aid, as you said, for a long time. I believe in this stuff. I have seen this work. I have seen children who have never had access to education speak and do things differently. I have seen patients being saved. So I know this will work. And I have seen Barcelona turn things around. I have seen things happening in China. So I know this can happen. However, I also know it is very difficult for it to happen. So I'm going to ask a question to end my session, and hopefully this is the discussion for the day or two. Is this a new dawn, or is it a false beginning in India? Is it a new dawn, or is it a false beginning? So to do that, I want to give you an example of why. I'll go to my favorite, my hero, which is Thomas Edison. I collect cylinder phonographs. Not the disc, not the gramophone, the one earlier from 1880s to 1910. The cylinder types. Most of us have never seen it. I have one of the largest collections in the world. If Thomas Edison was born again and came to my home in Florida, he would see my collection and say, Anil, I touched that. That scratch, I made it. And by the way, I would show him this machine, the holy grail of phonographs that started the sound and movie industry, Idalia. And he would love it. He would listen to it, and he would say, I have not heard it for 130 years. Then I say, now I want you to see how my daughter Ambika listens to music. And this is what she listens to. He will never make the connection between his invention and the iPod. Never in a million years. Then I tell him, let's go and see the CEO of the utility company, the electric utility company, because you founded GE. In 1892, he created the electric grid. Let's go talk to them. And you know, within 10 minutes, the CEO of the electric grid company and Edison will have absolute 100% compliance. They will talk like as if nothing has changed. Because this is what he designed in 1892 that became GE. And this is what the electric grid looks like today. So the question to ask is, why did one industry he found change so much and the other not? And I will tell you, because there were 5 things. First is visionary leadership. We have to talk about smart cities, but we have to ask the question, for what? What are you going to do the smart city for? What is the purpose of a smart city? What are you going to transform? What are you going to create? What is going to be different for the lives of the people? Then you have to ask, are you thinking globally or are you thinking locally? I would say to everyone in this room, force us to think globally, not to say it is about a poor country or a poor city. Unless we say we are going to compete with the best in the world and we are going to create something that competes with the best, we are not going to create a global industry to continue to sustain smart cities. Smart regulations. Most regulations in a city, everywhere in the world, are designed for the mechanical world, not for the digital world. You see that sign, exit signs? They cost money. But you won't get a permit unless you do that. That's the most useless thing there is right now in this building. You have a smartphone. If something happens, we'll send you a signal on the speaker that says, people in this room sit, don't move. This thing just says exit, walk out. And it costs money and it's wasted. Same thing with in-ground retention tanks. You don't get permit unless you have a certain level of in-ground retention tank. Yet, with water harvesting, you don't need 40% to 60% of the water that you are taking from the municipality. Why are you spending money on all that in-ground retention tank, which is based on square footage of the building and consumption? Yet, you will not get a permit, so smart regulation is needed. Public-private partnerships. This is where I think Cisco can't do it, Oracle cannot do it, IBM cannot do it, Schneider cannot do it. No country, no company can do it on their own. It has to be true public-private partnerships, like the one that Tony talked about. And last one is, you cannot have a smart city unless you have an ecosystem that is local, inside the city. This is where India has the advantage over many other cities. You have the scale, we have the technology, we have the capability, but we cannot have 3 out of 5. It has to be 5 out of 5. And when you do that, then we can create something that we call smart cities. I'm sorry, did I go over my 30 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you. Fabulous presentation. Many of us have many questions, but as timekeeper, what I'll do is I will ask next speaker to speak, and then we will take the question, because we need to give a break for lunch at 1:35, and then we will come back at 2:15. So I think I will take the liberty of having one more speaker, and then we will go for Q&A. And I'm sure the time that Dr. Anil got is actually my time. So it means that not everybody would have the same amount of time. So given that, I think may I now request Mr. Tony Newling, Senior Director, Government Public Sector Asia from Microsoft, to make his presentation. In fact, he is responsible for the Asia Government Business Program, and he has successfully implemented Microsoft's very successful initiative called City Next. He worked with the national, state, and regional governments, and he's been working with the government of Singapore in introducing a number of smart thinking and applications. Over to you, Tony, for your presentation.
Thank you and good afternoon, and thank you for your warm welcome to Hyderabad. This is my first visit, and I'm very impressed. I've been to India many times, but it's amazing the development that your city has done. I wanted to talk to you briefly about some ideas from around the world. I agree completely with the Deputy Mayor that smart cities are not about technology, but we do have some interesting opportunities that come from technology. I'd just like to give you some examples that you could replicate in India. Microsoft's had a cities program for 1.5 years, although we've been working, of course, with cities for 30 years. And we agree that cities are about the people. And so the examples I want to give you are about how people can make a difference. So let me skip a couple of things in the interest of time. You have already heard from many of the panelists that there are some big trends that are making a difference in cities around the world. And these are the ones that we see. It was good to hear Cisco talk about the cloud, and we're seeing some amazing differences in the cost of technology from the cloud. But let me skip this one. I also wanted to briefly mention that as a responsible corporate citizen, Microsoft has declared itself as carbon neutral. Your former president talked about the importance of that yesterday. And it's not just about technology, it's about the processes that we use. So I'm visiting Hyderabad. I got on a plane from Singapore to come here. My department pays a carbon tax back to Microsoft for my trip. That money is then used to foster new forms of renewable energy. For example, you can see on the right, we're investing in wind power projects in the US to power our large data centers in the US. So I just wanted to give a brief advertisement for that. So let me start with a few of the patterns that we see in cities around the world. The first is citizen engagement. And the example I'm showing you here is from London, and yes, it is a developed city, but I wanted to talk about what's replicable in countries like India or Indonesia, where I was last week. The application is called Love Clean Streets, and there's a couple of interesting things about it. It is an application that allows citizens and city workers to report problems in the city. And so the picture you can see here is the data that has been reported in London this week by city workers and by citizens. If you go to YouTube and do a search for this, you'll see citizens talking about how valuable it is that the city government has provided this function to them, not only to report problems, but also to get feedback. For those who are elected officials, it's gold because the citizens are saying, this is fantastic, my city is actually responding to the reports that I make. Of course, the double-edged sword with that is that you must have a system that copes with the reports that are made. And I've been to a few cities where they've built this sort of system but don't have the back end, so both sides are important. So one, you have citizens engaging in their city. They're becoming true citizens because they become proud of their city. When they see a problem, they want it to be fixed. The origin of this system was before the London Olympics, when London was quite concerned about the image the city would present to the world as visitors came for the Olympics. Graffiti everywhere, garbage dumped on the streets. Yes, it even happens in London. And so this system was put in place to help with that. The second key point is about cloud technology. This was built using public cloud technology, which means that the councils participating in the scheme only have to pay transaction fees for how much the system is used. In the past, we would have had to build a data center, buy computers, buy disk storage, even at 3 cents a gigabyte, buy networking gear, and employ lots of people to manage that system. In this case, the cities can simply buy a subscription or pay a subscription for the amount they use, and the costs are significantly lower. And we're seeing, therefore, that this sort of technology is accessible to smaller cities, to cities in developing markets, and I'll talk about that in a minute. A couple of examples you can look at directly. This Love Clean Streets is on the web. You can go to this. You can look at reports on a daily basis. You can see how the system works. You can see the testimonials for it. There's another example, which is from a company called CitySourced, which is based in the US, which does a similar thing. And finally, we have in our booth in the showcase an example that was built here in Hyderabad by a number of Indian Microsoft employees who participated in a company hackathon. And within a week built a concept and are now productizing this for use in the greater Hyderabad metropolitan area. One thing I will say, though, is that another pattern I see is the same solution being built again and again and again and again. So please consider whether you can use technology that's already been deployed. In this case, Love Clean Streets is built by a partner of ours in England called bbits that sell the service to anywhere in the world that wants to use it. The same is true for CitySourced. So please don't make the mistake that IT companies often make of rebuilding the same solution over and over again. A final point I wanted to make about this one is that it starts to enable this big data idea. So you can see in the picture on the right these bubbles of reports. It allows the city to start to understand what is happening. So, for example, if there is a cluster of graffiti in the city, in a particular location, they can start to perhaps make a police report. Perhaps this area of the city you should be looking out in more often because there are people who are regularly graffitiing that area. And most importantly, although I have great respect for all of the sensors that we're building everywhere, this allows citizens to be sensors with the mobile phones that they're all purchasing. So a great example of citizen engagement makes citizens part of the city. It also allows the city to save money, to fix problems rather than finding them, and to spend less on IT and more on fixing the city. So that's one pattern I see very often, this 3-1-1. Moving on from that is this idea of open data. And I'm showing one example here, which is from Singapore, the city I live in. I've looked at open data catalogues from around the world. There are a couple that really stand out as, I think, world's best practice. One is Singapore, and the other is from the city of Barcelona. If you go to cities from my country, Australia, and you look at their open data catalogues, you'll find two things. You'll find a lot of PDF files. And a PDF file is, well, somewhat machine readable, but it's person readable, not really machine readable. And you'll see a lot of summary data, which is not really actionable. So both Singapore and Barcelona are publishing transaction data, the things that are actually happening that people can work on. What I'm showing you on the bottom there is a map that I built in 10 minutes in the city of Singapore. So we had a conference in Singapore, much like this one in June, called the World City Summit, and the CEO of the National Environment Agency was coming to visit us. So I went on to Singapore's open data catalogue and I downloaded a list of all of the restaurants in Singapore and their health gradings. In Singapore, they give A, B, C, and D for the health grading for the restaurant. A is very clean and D is not so clean, although my Singaporean friends will tell you it's much better to eat in a D restaurant because the food is more tasty. So they grade the restaurants and they also publish data on suspensions. So what I was able to do was pull this data into a very basic analytics tool. You might have heard of it. It's called Microsoft Excel. And with a few clicks, generate this geolocated map of all of the restaurants in Singapore. Now, why is that important? Because in the past, this data was only accessible to IT professionals. Now, the people who are responsible for food cleanliness, restaurant cleanliness in Singapore are able to access, manipulate, analyse the data for their own purposes without waiting on IT. And very specifically, the head of the NEA said to me, you know what, Tony, I've been waiting 3 years for IT to deliver a solution like this, and you've just built it in 10 minutes. I think we need to think differently about our IT. So open data, if it's transaction-based, if it's all of the data, it enables innovation like this. The other thing that this drives is economic innovation that a few of our panelists have already talked about. It enables people in business, in academia, to use the data and come up with new ideas. So I'm going to give you a very simple example of this. Here's my phone, and it is, not surprisingly, I'm from Microsoft, a Windows phone. Now, I'm not sure that a lot of you have Windows phones, and certainly the government of Singapore doesn't think that the Windows Phone platform is one that it should spend money on developing for. However, what the government of Singapore did do is publish transport data. Where are the bus stops? When are the buses arriving? Where are they located? And so on. So by publishing that data, an enthusiast, a student who wanted to learn more about Windows, took that data and built an app. And here it is. I know you can't see it well, but I can see that at the bus stop near my house, a number 10 bus is arriving immediately, and in 22 minutes, a wheelchair-accessible bus will arrive. So what's important about this is by the government enabling, by publishing this data, you get all sorts of interesting innovation. A smaller platform, a lower penetration platform, and nevertheless, there are people out there who want to build applications for it. So my message for the governments is don't control publishing the data, fostering the collaboration between people, and then getting out of the way, which is fantastic, as well as advertising the products of this innovation through their app catalogue, which is also a great innovation. So pattern number 2 is open data. Please let the data be free, let it go into the public cloud. The timing of a bus is not secret, it's not a national secret. It can go into the public cloud with pure safety. And the third thing I wanted to show you as a pattern is this idea of citizen awareness. What I'm showing you here is an app that was built for the government of Singapore again called My Waters. It's available on Windows, Windows Phone, and iOS and Android, of course, as well, and on the web. And the backstory to this is the Public Utilities Board of Singapore is responsible for water and wastewater. And the picture you can see up here on the right-hand side is an event that happened a couple of years ago, the flooding of the main shopping precinct in Singapore called Orchard Road. We don't have Barcelona's tanks, so when there was a lot of rain, the water overflowed. And the picture on the left is one of the very important shops, women's fashion shops, completely flooded by water. It's below the road level. And the picture on the right is some expensive cars. In Singapore, people like to have expensive cars, and those are damaged by water. Now, the Singapore government can't stop the rain. The Singapore government can perhaps improve the water distribution system for when it rains heavily, but there's always the 98th percentile event. So what do we do about it? So what they've decided to do is take the sensor data from the canals and publish it. And that's what you're seeing on the bottom right. This is actually, interesting enough, from this morning, a particular canal in Singapore. Now, why this is interesting is a citizen or a business living near that canal can subscribe to an SMS alert. If the water level in the canal reaches a certain point, they'll be alerted and they can take action. They can move their car, they can move their stock. So using the sensors but using them in new innovative ways is very interesting. What's also interesting about this is the company that built it is a 30-person company. 18 months ago, it was a 2-person company that built this and sold it to the Singapore government. So not the big companies, the big multinationals, but rather a small, very small company based in Singapore that's been able to build this sort of solution. So again, opening up your data, freeing your data, and then making it available in innovative new ways is something you can achieve. And then finally, I'll skip a couple here. The final one I wanted to show you, because I know I'm talking about a lot of developed market examples. I just wanted to show you something we did last week. Excuse me. In Indonesia, we went to the city of Makassar, and because the city opened some data on things that they had available, like locations of hospitals, locations and costs of ambulances and so on, we had 500 students from city universities who participated in a mayor's appathon. The mayor laid out 8 challenges, and these students, in a few days, were able to build innovative new applications to solve city problems. Like, for the poor of Indonesia, how much is an ambulance ride going to cost me, and is the hospital available to receive me? Very interesting. So again, by opening the data, by facilitating these sorts of app challenges, you can make amazing differences without having to control everything. So I hope that's useful to you, and thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. Full company presentations, and many of you would like to seek clarifications and questions. In fact, Honorable Deputy Mayor has just, he has come after a long journey, so he may not be available post-lunch, so I can see. So I think we will open up the floor for discussions. We had 4 interesting presentations. The floor is open for discussion. The microphones are available. Okay. We'll take about 4 or 5 questions. Just a minute. We'll start with this.
My question is to Mr. Menon. You said during your talk that governments have to take tough decisions to come up with smart cities. So could you please elaborate on what are these tough decisions? Because
Sorry, what was it? Government has to take tough decisions.
Tough decisions, yeah.
For smart cities.
Yeah, because our the present urban development minister, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, when he came to Hyderabad, he said smart cities for funding for smart cities, people have to be taxed. So is it one of that tough decisions? Presently, are the companies like Cisco, Oracle, Microsoft, are they talking to each other in terms of technology? Thank you.
So let me just take the answer. It's a very broad question. By the way, it's not tough question, tough decisions just in India. And I'm sure Deputy Mayor Vives will also say the kinds of tough decisions he had to make in Barcelona. So I'll answer it at two levels, and it's a much longer, but I'm just going to take two. In every city that we work in, every city, almost uniformly, when we talk about this, there's one person we can talk to. A person whose job is to think about the entire city as an executive and also as a provider of social services. They're accountable to the people, they get elected by the people. That is not here in India. That's the first problem you have, is you don't know who to talk to and who is responsible for all the different elements of the pieces that goes in. Because even for simple things like zoning, in a typical city there are many more. And Ashwin Mahesh, who's been working in this area, can speak to it in his sleep, and he will start crying in the middle of his speech, because this is the biggest challenge. That's a political decision on what you will stop doing. Even things like the 74th Amendment, where you're trying to delegate authority down to the ULB, has not really happened, and it's because of political decision making as to who controls the power at the state level, at the city level, at the regional level. So that's one that I think is an important political decision that you have to resolve at some point, or come up with an alternative to cover that pact. That's just one example. The second one is that you have traditional agencies. You already have established agencies with budget, with accountability. Now you got to make them work, and some will lose something, at least in perception and in actuality also. How do you get them to work together? You have many cameras, one for traffic, one for police, one for other things. Why do you need 3 cameras when you can have one camera on one network with different protocols that allows the police to have more information at a higher resolution than traffic at a different? Those are political decisions, not just technology decisions. I'm just giving you a few examples, and I'll stop at that.
Yes, sir. Dr. Ravindra?
Yeah, just one thing, because I think that the point that Anil touched is very, very important. Perhaps the most revolutionary decision we made in Barcelona related to governance was putting under a single political elected person the following responsibilities: urbanism, waste, energy, environment, water, housing, mobility, information systems and telecommunications, and metropolitan governance. And that person is me, which means that I make decisions for all that. So people know who is accountable and who is responsible. And I am here to be a general of 5 stars, well, not here in Barcelona, to make those decisions. Otherwise, I'm going to be quit by the people.
Chris Johnson, I'm from Sydney in Australia. There seems to be a dilemma building up in this discussion that I detect. One is that information technology means, from a governance sense, more and more people have more and more information and can contribute to decision making. On the other hand, we've got hyper growth and doubling of cities and new density, but these new people are not represented. The incoming population is not represented in the democratic system. And what I find in Australia, and particularly in Sydney, is the existing community does not want new growth, does not want change. And these people are not represented somehow. So it seems to me a dilemma that if we give more and more a kind of control, this is a participatory democracy as opposed to representative, to existing people, it's going to create a real tension about how we govern and make growth really happen. So I'm interested if anyone's got some interesting experiences in how we represent the future communities to allow growth to occur, and particularly with an ageing population where people have got time and are generally anti-growth and trying to say, I'm very happy, why do I need change?
Yeah, thank you. We'll take a couple of more questions and then we will pass on to the panel. Dr. Ravindra, would you like to?
We have been hearing a lot about citizen engagement. I think almost every speaker says that citizen is at the center of governance and so on. My question is particularly with reference to Barcelona, where the deputy mayor spoke about citizen engagement and social inclusion and so on. what is the process of your citizen engagement? How do you really consult citizens, number one? And secondly, do you really make use of the views expressed by citizens in your own, decision making? How do citizens, how does it impact decision making, particularly decision making, and does it really go into the process of governance, or is it just a formality?
Can I take one more and then we'll pass on? The gentleman behind, last. Can someone pass on the...
Sir, I am from RDT Rural Development Trust, which is usually known as Fundación Vicente Ferrer Anantapur. I would like to ask you three things, sir. There is a big problem of child labor. We come to know the statistical data, 10 million children are the child laborers, who are in, most of them are 70% in metropolitan cities and small cities all over the world. So, do you have any mechanism to prevent this one? It's because it would be a big problem. So some of them are becoming anti-social elements like drug. They are.
Thank you. I think the question is
by mafia like that. No,
we understand. What you're saying is the child labor issue, but it's may not be directly relevant to the presentation that we had.
Yeah, one more.
So, any more question?
Yeah.
Just we'll take one.
One more. Land is limited, no, sir. Land is limited.
No, I know. But please understand that we are discussing about the presentations. Yeah. That issue we'll take it up later. Yeah. Thank you, lady.
Hi, my name is Sanchali. One of the issues that we spoke about with Tony was about open data for governance. And it strikes me that there's a key tension here between the government's desire for ownership and security over data as we enter a more and more open world, and the desire for the private sector to use that data to produce more innovations to improve the lives of citizens. So I'm interested in examples of when maybe you've navigated one of those challenges from either the public or private side.
Okay, over to the panel. We had three interesting questions. Probably Deputy Mayor can talk about the question Dr. Ravindra asked about how do we really engage with citizens.
Would you imagine me coming here talking about citizen participation and telling you that it is all a makeup? I mean, it would be nonsense. You've seen that flyover that we tore down. We've made that with the full participation of the neighbors of Barcelona, of that quarter Barcelona. They even decide where, how do you call that? Not equipments, I can't remember the name for that in English. Where the social services have to be placed. They decide where the social housing has to be placed. They decide where the school has to be placed. It is, of course, our responsibility really deciding whether we do that or not. But once you put them at the beginning of the process of deciding it, we do that. Just a very quick example. That is exactly as when you are sitting with your children and your wife and you having dinner and you tell them, children, would you like to go to Paris or to Rome for holidays? And they say, Dad, I don't care. Go wherever you want. It is very different when you say, hey, children, we have to go on holidays. Why don't we talk about it? So that's the real difference. And that's what we do in Barcelona. You're invited to come to any... Now, today, there's a very important meeting deciding what's going to happen around Sagrada Familia. Most of you know that Gaudi, very important church. It is impossible to make big decisions in Barcelona without participation. By the way, I want to talk for a second about immigrants. We have increased, not in Barcelona, but in Catalonia, our nation, we have increased the population. We have a third more new Catalans in Catalonia coming to Catalonia in the last 15 years, a third more. I cannot think about my nation without them. So this is a political decision. You do it or you don't do it. You can pretend that they are not there to stay. If they are there to stay, they are part of ourselves. So identity is not a fixed photography. Identity is a running photography. We are going to become something different, thanks God, because they are with us. And the last one, open data. There are many, many examples. But do not think about big company. I mean, we are obsessed with secrets. And as someone said, Tony said that, I mean, the bus lines are not a secret. Think about those startups. Think about those entrepreneurs being able to use the hundreds of thousands of millions of data that we produce in a city. They have the imagination that we don't have. So we have to put that wealth in the hands of those guys.
Mr. Bell, would you like?
I'd like to give two examples of crowdsourcing in India also. See, with the new regime, two new schemes were launched, the National Sanitation Mission and the Jan, that bank account thing. For both these things, the logo and the slogan came from the public, you know. The logo for National Swachh Mission, it was an open thing and about 50,000 people put in their names and someone came up with that logo. So the new thrust even with the Indian government is get the people right from the beginning. Initially what we've been doing is, let's say for a 12th plan, we prepare the plan and then we put it on the website for discussions with the public. Now we're going back a step. In fact, 3-4 days back our secretary was saying, smart cities, why are you taking that points of view now? You should have taken it right in the beginning. In fact, that realization is increasingly dawning on the government. Secondly, on the data thing, see, I'm the economic advisor in the Ministry of Urban Development. And I'm sort of also responsible for the data source. I'm the Facebook face, the Twitter and all. There's no data that I have which is not open to the public. So this is also a myth that the government is sitting on a lot of huge data. Every data we have is put on the website. You know, now it's a rule in the government that any data which is collected from public funds has to be put on the sort of open domain. So this is a huge myth, you know, the government is sitting on a lot of data, and which is, so there's some intelligence data and all will be there with the CBI and the intelligence fellows, but 80% of, you know, socio-economic data is there in the public domain. And you can always ask for it under right to information. You can ask for it, what I wrote on the file 2 days back. Thank you.
Dr. Chari, may I just add one
Sure,
point here?
please.
I think underneath all of these questions, I think we have to also be recognizing of one fact, which is there needs to be a level of trust between the governing bodies, agencies, and the people. I think that is the implied question there. I want to give you one practical example of Barcelona, which I thought was one of the very few instances that's happened. We started working with Barcelona under Mayor Jordi Heró, right? Heró. And I remember my chairman sitting and having the meeting and saying to the mayor, Mayor, I hear you're coming up for election. So all this is fine. We're going to get started. We're going to engage. We're going to have a long-term view. But what happens when you lose, or if you lose, the next person kills everything. So the mayor said this to us. He says, that's a very good point. I want to do one thing. And he picked up the phone and he called his opponent. And he said, can you please come over here and meet with the CEO chairman of Cisco and with the president of this thing in the worldwide organization. I want you to come in. Please meet with him if you don't mind. And the opponent came, sat down.
We won the election.
And they won the election. Now here's where it gets very interesting, because he said this is about Barcelona. It's not about me. It's not about the politics. It's not about my company or it's about Barcelona's future. We're going to do it. I remember him sitting there saying, we believe in this. This is the future of Barcelona. We got this. So John said, okay, let's move ahead. Now, a year and a half later, was it, Tony, that we did the announcement? Yep. You and I stood up there in the announcement, and the first seat was the former mayor, Jordi Heró, sitting there. So my point being is it requires political parties to work together, opposing parties to care about the city. That is the whole point about the city being at the center. And that, I think, we cannot walk away from. It is something we have to recognize. It will take some time, I think, for that trust to be built between the politically governing bodies and the others, especially in places like India and other countries that have had different histories. So.
Thank you. Given the time constraint, I think we'll break for lunch now. The session would continue. We will come back at 2:30. Before we leave, I would like to thank all the speakers who have spoken, and I'm sure all of you will come back and have some more questions. Thank you very much for the excellent panel. Deputy Mayor Anthony Ives and Mr. Bal gave overview on the 100 Smart City Agenda, and also we had very compelling presentation from both Anil Menon and Mr. Tony Newling, giving a overall framework. Now we will move into a number of case studies, a number of very focused discussions on some of the smart city programs, interventions in different cities. Without taking too much time, now I would invite Mr. Ramon Tora, General Manager, Barcelona Metropolitan Area, to start the session. It's a privilege that Mr. Tora could take out his time and join here. He's been involved in the Barcelona Metropolitan Area, involving 36 municipalities in this area, in fact, responsible for metropolitan planning, public space, public transportation, waste management, and he's also CEO of Imposol. It's an Institute for Metropolitan Social Housing Program. So he has a very rich experience, and on behalf of the organizers, on behalf of all the fellow participating institutions, I would like to welcome him, and I request him to start the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My presentation is in Spanish, but my translator is better than me for follow its presentation. No? My translation explain better than me my ideas. No? My ideas is explained better for my translator. Thank you. Bueno, después de la presentación de Antoni Vives, bueno, es difícil de poder, con el trabajo más concreto que hacemos. Antoni Vives nos ha explicado en Barcelona cómo pasamos de los sueños a implementar las realidades aplicando la inteligencia y el trabajo. Creo que es una lección interesante y en la que todos podemos colaborar. Esta interacción, o sea, el valor de la inteligencia y del trabajo, creo que es la manera de avanzar en una ciudad mejor. Antoni Vives también es vicepresidente del área metropolitana de Barcelona. Barcelona es la municipalidad de Barcelona es la mitad de la población del área metropolitana de Barcelona. Y él tiene un papel destacado en los proyectos e iniciativas que desarrollamos. Primero les haré una breve presentación del área metropolitana de Barcelona. Antoni Vives hablaba de qué era la ciudad, qué representaba en el ámbito de Cataluña y más allá. El área metropolitana de Barcelona es un territorio relativamente pequeño. Es un territorio de 636 kilómetros cuadrados. Tiene una población de 3.200.000 habitantes. Por tanto, es un territorio relativamente denso, es un territorio bastante denso, por lo que es una ciudad de estas características. También hemos de tener presente que es una ciudad mediterránea, es una ciudad compacta. El área metropolitana de Barcelona tiene una geografía complicada, es una geografía difícil, como lo es la de toda Cataluña. Este pequeño país situado en el Mediterráneo de España es una geografía que tiene la costa, tiene dos ríos de régimen mediterráneo, tiene montañas, tiene un llano. En un territorio muy pequeño tenemos una diversidad geográfica realmente importante. Es un territorio con 36 municipios. El área metropolitana de Barcelona es una institución formada básicamente, que es creada por ley del Parlamento de Cataluña, pero lo integran 36 municipios y sus competencias son competencias básicamente municipales. Para dar una cierta dimensión a la economía de este territorio también podemos situar que el área metropolitana de Barcelona representa prácticamente el 52% del PIB de Cataluña, que representa este 52% con el 40% de la población de Cataluña. O sea, tiene 300.000 habitantes, Cataluña 7,5 millones. Por tanto, es una región dinámica, una región económicamente importante en el contexto catalán y español, pero básicamente tiene una economía y una sociedad muy dinámica y, por tanto, con transformaciones constantes y con una exigencia de mejoras constantes en la gestión de la ciudad. La organización de la estructura de la administración metropolitana abasta las distintas competencias que la ley le otorga, agrupadas en 4 áreas determinantes. El área de territorio, en que podemos encontrar lo que es el urbanismo, el planeamiento urbanístico, las infraestructuras, el diseño y construcción de espacio público o la construcción y el desarrollo de políticas de vivienda de precio asequible. En el ámbito de medio ambiente, otro de los ámbitos centrales derivados de las competencias, podríamos encontrar el ciclo integral del agua, lo que es la distribución del agua potable, el tratamiento del agua, de las aguas grises y negras, y el ámbito de sostenibilidad. Por tanto, ámbito de ciclo integral del agua, sostenibilidad y el tratamiento de residuos. En el ámbito de movilidad, podríamos encontrar las políticas de movilidad sostenible, la bicicleta, el desarrollo de espacios de movilidad sostenible a pie, etcétera. El tema del vehículo eléctrico, tema del transporte público en 2 líneas, lo que sería el transporte, la gestión directa del transporte mediante una empresa pública que es Transportes Metropolitanos de Barcelona, que es el que tiene la red de metro de Barcelona, y lo que es la red de autobuses básicamente centrado en el ámbito de la ciudad de Barcelona, y otra parte de gestión indirecta a través de concesiones de colaboración pública-privada. Y, por último, el ámbito de desarrollo económico, con un apartado específico de promoción económica, de promoción de la implementación de inversiones y la creación de puestos de trabajo, y los ámbitos de planeamiento estratégico para visibilizar cuál es el camino, cuál es la línea para afrontar mejor el futuro. Los retos y oportunidades para los gobiernos, ya centrándonos en el concepto de Smart Cities, ¿no? Las Smart Cities, como entendemos y un poco como las definiríamos, sería este concepto alrededor de 6 diferentes conceptos específicos. La Smart Mobility, la Smart Economy, la Smart Environment, Smart Living, Smart People y Smart Governance, ¿no? Digamos, estas líneas sobre las que la interacción del concepto Smart City puede desarrollar políticas, o son los elementos que ha de integrar en su concepción. El territorio, estos sectores con independencias fuertes que analizan las perspectivas a lo largo en estas conurbaciones y con perspectivas de futuro, ¿no? La situación, ¿no? La situación de perdón. La situación de la actual coyuntura económica, ¿no? Que especialmente en los países del sur de Europa exige aplicar nuevos modelos de colaboración público-privada, ¿no? La crisis económica que se vive especialmente en Europa y en los países del sur ha acentuado la necesidad de esta colaboración pública-privada. Es un concepto que nosotros nos creíamos ya antes de la crisis, pero que ahora es una necesidad realmente clara. El impacto, ¿no? el aprovechar las economías de escala y de abasto asociadas a los proyectos de Smart City en unos ámbitos de la ciudad y de conurbación urbana mejora significativamente el impacto social de las políticas, ¿no? Finalmente, el tema de la marca, ¿no? La marca Smart City es un componente esencial en la competencia entre grandes metrópolis a nivel global y refuerza el atractivo para inversores, el talento y la economía productiva y del conocimiento, ¿no? Aceleraré un poco, veo que vamos... Estaría después en los retos y oportunidades, el satisfacer las nuevas demandas ciudadanas y de servicio, la reingeniería por unos servicios más eficientes y una adaptación ágil a los cambios, el Internet de las cosas, la localización de los datos y la información en las cosas y en los lugares, las nuevas plataformas tecnológicas, más complejidad y nuevos hábitos. Finalmente, el Open Data. Se ha hablado anteriormente, la capacidad que aporta la transparencia al desarrollo de las sociedades y las economías, ¿no? La colaboración y la participación como un tema esencial del Smart City. Pasaré rápidamente al proyecto central. Ya tal como decía, nuestro proyecto es un proyecto modesto y de pequeña escala y que va de abajo para arriba, ¿no? Partimos de dar a la relación entre los distintos actores, del ciudadano, la administración pública y el gestor del servicio, que puedan tener una relación integrada en tiempo real y en continuo, ¿no? Este sistema que hemos aplicado a dos servicios básicos, que es la gestión y mantenimiento de la red de parques públicos metropolitanos y a la gestión y mantenimiento de las playas metropolitanas. Dos elementos esenciales de gestión del área metropolitana y de mejora de la calidad de vida de sus ciudadanos. Es un proyecto que estamos implementando, es un proyecto que está en desarrollo en esta primera fase, parques y playas, en la que introducimos esta relación en tiempo real directa entre el ciudadano, lo que es los distintos municipios que conforman el área metropolitana, los servicios integrados del área metropolitana y las compañías de servicios que prestan estos servicios de gestión y mantenimiento de los espacios públicos. Vemos un esquema, no me entretengo mucho más, es precisamente introducir estas relaciones para facilitar en tiempo real la solución de los problemas. Aquí vemos la estructura escalada de esta plataforma que tiene distintos niveles y que permite estas relaciones integradas entre todos los actores que intervienen en la gestión o participan en el uso de estos espacios. Vamos viendo finalmente distintos elementos que acompañan esta gestión de plataformas de uso directo de los ciudadanos, los apps, los apps, que permiten en el tema de las playas tener una relación directa a través también de sensores situados en las playas, sensores que tienen alimentación de energía solar, esta sería uno. Otra es para el uso del transporte público, el conocer en tiempo real cuándo va a llegar nuestro transporte público, nuestro autobús, saber cuántos minutos tendremos que esperar y, por tanto, antes de salir de casa podemos llegar justo al tiempo en que nos llega el servicio. Este es una plataforma específica de la empresa pública de metro y autobús, también para facilitar los itinerarios, cuál es el itinerario más eficiente, tiempos de llegada, etcétera. Es facilitar el uso de los sistemas al ciudadano, que no le cause inconvenientes, por tanto, también gestión de emergencias. El tema del taxi, los taxis, un problema en cualquier ciudad en cuanto al uso del sistema de tarifas y los costes. tenemos este que facilita el saber qué coste va a tener el servicio que presta el taxi, o para facilitar el uso de la movilidad sostenible, el saber dónde vamos a encontrar un puesto para guardar la bicicleta de forma segura a través de este servicio de Bicibox, este servicio de guarda segura de bicicletas como estímulo al uso de la bicicleta, también la bicicleta eléctrica. Nada más, gracias por su atención, lamento el tiempo que he superado, cualquier pregunta ya les atenderé luego. Muchas gracias.
Very interesting presentation. As you would see that these innovations are not only happening in the core city of Barcelona, but in the Barcelona metropolitan region comprising 36 municipalities. So it's actually happening at a scale, not only related to street lighting, but also in public transport, bicycle. So the core civic service delivery are getting improved through variety of innovations, technology being the backbone. Now we move to the next speaker. We have with us Mr. Vlad Krinin, CEO of Metropolis. He is coming from Russia. Welcome you, sir. He is the Chief Executive Officer of a company which is actually engaging technologies for participatory planning involving active citizen engagement, and they have developed a number of applications, number of interesting projects on the ground. So over to you.
Hello, dear colleagues. Good afternoon. My name is Vladislav Krenin. I'm CEO of Metropolis. This is a Russian-born company with global headquarters now in London and development office in Moscow. And we are focused on technologies for engaged citizens and smart cities. We've taken a broad look in the technologies, and that means that we develop not only digital products, but also educational methods and empirically test practices. But today I'd like to speak about smart cities and participatory solutions that could be good for that. In fact, I will speak about participation and engagement, and you know this is the most popular word now in this conference, so I will try to do my best to not be boring for you. But firstly, let's talk about what is a smart city. There are too many official and unofficial definitions, charts and schemes that no one can tell you surely what is smart and what it just stands by. So for me, smart is a change from the city that just is a physical space to the city that is actual intellectual space also. What does that mean? Now we can consider a city as an expert that has big data and makes analysis for decision making. Smart city is a companion now, an interlocutor. That means that your local authorities, they ask questions, they give feedback, they count with you and with your local mind. Then smart city is the first time in history when city could be your partner. Authorities are interested now and are ready to start projects with citizens as partners. And finally, city is a provider. You know that it develops many solutions, apps that improve your daily life, step by step. What could be Indian smart cities focus? I know that there are many ways to develop this concept, but of course we need to set our priorities. So I set 4. First of all, be sustainable. What does it mean? Concentrate on technologies that provide cities with efficiency consumption of different resources. There is a lot of demand on resources, but you always need to make the technology smarter to decline this consumption. Water, electricity, gas, petroleum, transport, everything. Then be expert, collect big data, make analysis, and according to this analysis you can receive a positive feedback from people and from the usage patterns of each city infrastructure. So being an expert is very important now. Then we can't imagine a modern smart city without dialogue. So you should communicate with citizens on decision-making processes. And that is not too simple, in fact, because you always need this voluntarily demand from authorities. But it's the case you could provide with very simple modern technologies also. So putting people into dialogue is very important concept also. And finally, you can build, following these things, you can build a real participatory society that turns people initiatives and volunteering into some new city projects that engage people to make their cities better. And I think that today we has this change from the consumer society to participatory society, where our participation is the big idea and our participation becomes a huge motivation for every citizen that is active and want to develop its own city. And as I think, participation is a new city tax that could be paid voluntarily and enthusiastically. And it's very good for authorities. They could use this participation as a new resource that they don't count in their budgets. So, to be practical, let's have a look at participatory roadmap. This roadmap that we always use in city development, and we have good practices in Russian cities. Now we develop projects in Mexico, in London, in Spain. So we are focused not on whole cities, but on the parts, on districts, on streets, on yards, on houses, because this is the level when when people feel their city, their place, their spaces, and they want to participate in making decisions in this level, not in the level of the whole city. And that's very important. You should set a hyper-local level for initiatives. Then give to people a tool for hyper-local community building. We in Metropolis create a new tool that is called Geotech. That's our answer to old-fashioned local forums that are not very user-friendly now. And this Geotech gives you an opportunity to create local community among each district, among each street, among every house. So it gives you an opportunity to communicate with people, to implement new decisions, and to give local rules, local news, everything, but locally. Then, after you have this tool for community building, you should set up leaders of local communities. We have the technology that we called Local Initiatives Incubator, and it works perfect because we have many projects where more than 20% of citizen population participate in digital decision making, in digital idea making and things like that. But to involve people, there is no technology enough. You always need to have local leaders in mind to make them your agents of influence, to make them your project ambassadors. And to make this community interesting for them, you should involve local authorities and local businesses in this scheme. So these three actors, local community leaders, local authorities, and local businesses, they could talk about new local projects. That's very important also. Then, when the local incubator is set up, you can follow leaders to the special promotion tool that is called Promofy. That's our tool also, but you can create it. Everyone can create it, and it gives a good example of how local leaders can promote their initiatives, how can they share their petitions to the government, how they can have all the crowdfunding tools inside. So this Promify platform gives you, as a local leader, an opportunity to present your initiative, to build a local community, and to have all tools inside with petitions, crowdfunding, things like that. Next step is to give leaders a crowdsourcing tool. We have a special idea map that allows you to make digital crowdsourcing for districts, even for streets, about different problems according to the rubricator we have that makes people involved, and then the decision is ranked. So everyone could vote I'm for or I'm against this idea, and the main ideas could be implemented by the government or by the local leader who will orientize at these ideas during his work. Then you can, we have no time to watch a movie, okay? Then you should give your local leaders a project management tool. It's very important them to show best practices and make them follow these best practices. So we have a special service that is called How Tool that gives examples of best city projects, best practices by the experts and people who really make the best their cities, and everyone could follow good practices, everyone could repeat this project, and that gives a hack of new city projects in a time. And after all, what could be the biggest motivation for people, for local leaders who have a new projects? Of course, money. And we are the first company who set the participatory budgeting solution in Russia, and now we move to Latin America. I have 30 seconds. What is that? You should give your local leaders opportunity to participate in competitions, budgeting competitions, when they can get grants for their projects. And that works very good if they understand that at the end of the tunnel, at the end of their project, they could have money to realize all that. We have more than 10 projects yet realized in big cities like 16 million Moscow or 2 million Ufa, and this project involves people very much. So this is my short recommendation about how to build a smart city with not so smart and simple technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking to the time, Mr. Krenin. In fact, participatory planning is a part of the practically every country's governance agenda, but some of these tools, technologies can really help enable effective participatory planning. Before I ask the next speaker, what is the meaning of Metropolis?
Metropolis is like your city, so polis is city in Greek, and your is
your city. Yeah. Your city. Okay, thank you very much. Now I invite Dr. Ashwin Mahesh. He doesn't need much of introduction. He is actually a thought leader in the country, in India, and on the smart city agenda. In fact, Dr. Mahesh, Ashwin Mahesh, has actually been a member of a very important forum called ABIDE, which is actually a citizens forum in Bangalore, and of course he wears a number of hats, including political hat, I think, and also very closely working with academic, very closely working with civil society organization and the government. So with this few words of introduction, I request Dr. Mahesh to start the session.
Thank you, Dr. Chai. I'm going to talk about two things simultaneously. I'm going to talk about how to build smart city technologies really quickly in India in a way that our country can afford, that builds on manufacturing strengths in India and makes the made in India story also come alive as we go about building the smart cities. But I'm also going to talk about citizenship and democracy and our obligation to do this in a particular way. For about 2 years now, I've been talking about this thing called the publicly managed city. And I use that phrase in a very deliberate way. I think the city can be managed not only by officials, but also by the citizens. That in many areas, certainly in neighborhoods, citizens can manage many things themselves and don't need to rely on government to do this. The question then comes automatically is, are there limits to that model? Are there things that citizens cannot manage, for which we need formal government only to manage them? And that's what I've been exploring for the last few years. I run a small technology lab called MapUnity in Bangalore. There's never been more than 6 or 7 people in the lab. So most of the things that I'll talk to you about are actually done by only a handful of people. I myself, by training, I'm an astronomer. I used to study Antarctic clouds. So that also is not very relevant for urban development. So that tells you that anybody can do many of the things that I'm going to talk to you about. I'm glad our advisor to the urban development department is here, because this, I think, can be a roadmap for what we can achieve. MapUnity has built all kinds of systems: city management, traffic, public health systems, law and order systems. I built a CID network for South India once I didn't realize that the Home Minister would go and announce it before I was finished with it. Things like that. What are the deficits in the cities? The deficits are, we have silos in public administration. Departments don't talk much to each other. We have talent and training deficits. This is the reality. We don't have a municipal cadre. The best people are not able to come laterally into government. And planning has gone wrong from the beginning itself. If your planning is wrong, all the other things don't seem to compensate for it adequately. And there's a more important deficit, which is this feeling that Sarkar should solve the problems, that the solution should come from the government alone. Speaker after speaker in conference after conference will tell you this is not the case. But we haven't moved away from that model yet. And I don't blame only the government for this. Government is partly to blame for this, but a very large number of citizens also believe that Sarkar should solve the problem. This is simply unworkable. In a democracy, every one of us wants to consume good governance. Nobody wants to ask the question, who should produce it? Right? This is like going to a shop. You can't go to a car shop and say, I want to buy a towel. They don't sell towels in car shops. So if you want to buy good governance, you better produce good governance also and be part of the production side of it. What is smart? So the answer to the question, what is smart, comes from the deficits itself. Integrate the silos. Build internal capacity of the government. Any intervention that does not build the internal capacity of public officials cannot be smart in the long run. Rethink governance. Rethink the way work is done in government. Reboot and create collaborative approaches where citizens can also solve some of the problems. But so far what has happened is that with technology we have gone from paper silos to technology-enabled silos. The departments all have computers, they all have databases, but they still don't talk to each other. We have outsourced more and more. We have conceded that government cannot do certain things, and we have given this away to external organizations. This is not helping our government in any way. It's simply sort of kind of a band-aid. Governance is something that no solution provider wants to go anywhere near. Companies that sell technology solutions are afraid of words like governance, citizens, and things like that. But we claim all along that we are trying to produce good governance for the citizens, even though the solutions themselves don't have any of this. So how do you think differently? You don't have to just think outside the box. You have to go outside the box to solve this problem. The box doesn't have the answer. Some years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I built the Bangalore Transport Information System. This is an interesting thing, because I called it the Bangalore Transport Information System. If you heard the phrase Bangalore Transport Information System, you would think that somebody in Bangalore government must have built this, or government of Karnataka would have built this, but need not be so. You can build Hyderabad Transport Information System if you want to. What it needs to have is Hyderabad Transport Information. As long as it meets that criteria, it can survive quite well in the public space as well. But the important thing about this system is that we pulled multiple sources of data available with the transport department, the traffic police, the metro, the BMTC, and every other department together, and created a single website out of it. We also included taxi services, auto services, carpooling, all the sorts of things that come from the private sector market. Now keep in mind why this is important. Individual citizens in the city want such integrated platforms. But in government, there is no department for integration. It is nobody's job in government to produce this outcome. Ideally, the metropolitan planning councils should be working on these kinds of integrations, but they have been sort of weak more or less everywhere in the country, and that's not working well. So we must take it upon ourselves to do the things that government is not currently structured to do. Citizens often forget that government is a creation of the citizens. We behave as though citizens are a creation of the government. This can never work. The things that are not already created in government have to be done by us. That's our responsibility. One of the things that happened because we built the Bangalore Transport Information System is that we went on to build India's first traffic management center. This is the first generation of it. The second generation is much nicer with a large video wall, but most of the technologies are the same. The remarkable thing about this picture is that every single person sitting in this camera's field of view is a police constable. For this, we did something, I used to work for 6 years at NASA as a laser scientist and working on atmospheric clouds. One of the things that I realized is that 70% of even jobs like that were utterly boring. Most of us, if we are honest with ourselves, will admit that 80% of our job can be done by anybody with 2 days of training. It's only the last 20% that requires expertise, education, and all that. What that means is that 80% of what you can do should be doable by a police constable, should be doable by a bus conductor with 2 days of training. How do you build the tools and the training needed to bring a bus conductor to 80% of your competence, to bring a police constable to 80% of your confidence? You have to think of the smart city in this way. And then because we did the traffic management center and a few other things, we built the Big 10 bus. Now, the Big 10 bus is an important part of this transformation of public transport in Bangalore. And here, even more people got involved. As you can see, it's a fully designed bus. The word Big 10 is written in the bus in a way that is visible even from far away. And if you know Kannada or Telugu, you can even read it and you'll figure out that the word big reads big in both English and in the local language. It is a simple restructuring of bus services to make it direction-oriented. On all the major roads going in and out of the city and around the city, we started running the bus much more frequently in a very recognizable way. Now, when we talk about technologies for smart city, it's common to hear people say, if you stand at a bus stop, you should be able to tell, my bus is coming in 22 minutes or 14 minutes or whatever it is. If the bus comes in 1.5 minutes, it doesn't matter whether you have that technology or not. If you can create high-frequency service on the arterial networks, a very large part of the transportation problem will go away. If you can direction-orientate your mass transport systems, a very large portion of the problem will go away. If you can co-locate work and housing, a very large portion of the problem will go away. It's thinking about the problem from the ground up that's going to help us solve these things. And one other thing I should tell you, all this little stuff that I've been showing you, none of this involves any contract. It's all done freely by citizens, working voluntarily with the government, with department officials to make things better. How did it happen? We used information technology only to open up the system. Out of that, we created linkages to non-technology interventions also, like bus reforms. And in the process, you created an old ideal in democracy, which is government by the people. We always talk about government of the people, for the people, by the people in a very rhetorical way. But nobody stops to ask the question, what does by the people mean? And the answer is that some of the things that we expect government to do, we should be able to do ourselves. Otherwise, there's no need for this portion of that phrase. So now some other things that we are engaged on. And so this is important because it shows in India there's a problem of multiple departments managing multiple silos, which means your technology platforms have to be initially able to work with them. If you depend on integrated platforms, it won't work. You need to be able to build an environment portal. You need to be able to build a public safety portal. You need to be able to build, these are all actual implemented systems in Bangalore. And out of the same technology, you can't go and recreate the code base, recreate solutions one after the other to create these. No city in India can afford that speed of development or that cost of development. And all of these are done as free public information platforms, which government departments also use. Public uses, but governments also use. Now, a few slides about electronic city. Give me a couple of minutes here, Chari. It's a township authority. It's not your classic municipality. It is a collection of companies that are co-located in an 800-acre area, and they have an $8 billion economy that runs out of that. Certain things are possible there, which are not possible as easily in other parts of the country. So we set out to prove what is possible there. Simple goal, make electronic city the smartest urban area in India. Make the made in India story, make that stand up. Make the devices and the sensors that you are putting into the smart city platforms, make them made in electronic city if possible, or at least made in India. And make it at India price. And this is the only way that it can run fast enough. And in the process, can we bring 15% of the global smart business to e-city, or to at least 20-25% of this business? People talk about $19 trillion. Can we bring $4 trillion of that money to India?
I think it's possible. We must think at that level. The problem is as follows. The typical smart cities, and this is, is meant to be technical, but it need not be. The typical smart city problem solution has backbone infrastructure, devices, a management technology that listens to the devices, and web portals that show the data from these devices. But what has happened around the world is that you have parallel stacks of this. You have a smart lighting solution, a smart mobility solution, a smart water solution, even in the same city. And no city in India can afford to buy these things one by one. Therefore, what you need to do is to take the common piece. What is the common piece? The web listening technologies which collect the data and the device management technologies that hold all the data together. Make that common piece, let the cities own that. If the cities own this common infrastructure, or at least own the technology elements within that common infrastructure, then any device can talk to it, any website can present data on top of it, any application can be written on top of it. This allows you to act much more nimbly and much more openly without getting into proprietary systems. And so this is my last slide. This is what we're building in Electronic City. A single platform that will show you mobility, energy, safeties, water management, waste management, all together in an integrated manner. It will show you all the usual technological elements from each of these different aspects, but it will also do things for you that are required for municipal administration. It will do vendor empanelment. It will issue news and announcements. It will all the forms used by the township authority are online. You can interact with them online itself. Processes of government will be electronically tracked. So if you make an application for something, you will have continuous ability to monitor that. There will be feedback and suggestions. We're building a dashboard that you can use on your mobile and on your web platforms as well. I believe this kind of starting point will, and you can take something like this and begin to build Smart Hyderabad tomorrow. You can build Smart Bombay day after tomorrow. When we built the Heritage platform, we deployed 73 cities of the Heritage platform on the same day. It is possible to build nimble, low-cost, hosted technologies out of which many, many cities in India can quickly become smart. If we don't do this, there's no easy way to get to the level of smartness that is being discussed in forums like this. But the only way to build this is to allow citizens also to be part of the builders. Participation doesn't mean inviting the citizens after the government has made 90% of the steps needed. Participation has to be from the beginning. If we do it this way, we'll get much better India. Thank you.
Thank you for very powerful, clear messaging. Thank you very much. We now move to the next speaker, Mr. Jalal Shah, Director of Business Development of Minhart. He has come from Singapore. They're working extensively in Singapore on variety of subjects, sustainable smart city program, water management, wastewater management, and also has enormous experience in structuring public-private partnership. Over to you, sir. Request you to follow the time.
Thank you, Professor Chari, for the brief introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, today it's a great pleasure standing in front of you in this great city and historical city of Hyderabad. My presentation today will speak about Singapore as a case study for the future 100 smart cities that are planned to be developed in India. The theme of this session, 100 smart cities in India. We probably need to ask ourselves, is this program achievable? It's a tremendous challenge and a huge challenging task to build that smart cities. As Dr. Ashwin mentioned, what are the deficiencies? Do we have the capacity, the technical, and all that to really deliver the program? I think what's critical today is to learn from other case studies. I'm aware London, New York, Paris, Singapore are not Hyderabad, or actually each city is different. But I think smart cities are those that learn from the other best practices. And today, my presentation will touch upon Singapore and how Singapore evolved as a next generation smart city. I will briefly go over about our company. It's not a marketing tone, but I would like to show how a private sector has contributed in building a Singapore Smart. Minehead essentially started in Australia in 1955
We do have a global footprint. We have 40 offices around the world, and we are one of the largest independent consulting engineering. Essentially, Minehead is a private sector, although government of Singapore has a minority shareholding. As I said, our group undertakes projects worth 15 billion US dollar annually. We are a fully integrated engineering service company. We do have a global footprint across the world. We have 40 offices around the world, and we do have a strength in a complete engineering services. The sectors we work in, buildings is a core. We do cover lots of high-rise buildings, convention centers, and all that's industrial, IT, which Hyderabad is very famous for. We dealt with building data centers, hospitals, schools, sustainability, urban land development, infrastructure, transportation, metros, railways. Some of the track record of our company and how a private company like Minehead has successfully contributed in making Singapore smart. Essentially, we did contribute 30% from a private sector perspective of developing the smartness. The infrastructure, we've done more than 50 infrastructure projects, industrial, power, energy, water, wastewater. I will not go over all of this, but again, metros, we've done more than 60 metros around the world. Our experience not only includes Singapore, although we did the majority of the metros in Singapore, including China, Malaysia, Hong Kong. We've done more than 18 international airports, 7,000 kilometers. Smart city concept. I am aware today there is no uniform definition, and I will not go into the debate of defining what's smart city. But what's important, gentlemen and ladies, is what are the essential components that make a smart city. It cannot be an isolated view of looking into a smart city. And the theme of this Metropolis conference is cities for all. Housing and a smart city context is not reserved only for the elite, only for the rich NRIs to stay in. Housing is an essential component. I mean, today, Dr. Anil was presenting how the IT costs, for example, the hardware, how it has been drastically reduced. I mean, the mainframes and the storage devices, which cost thousands of dollars, came down to cents. If that drop was applied to the housing sector, with today's engineering capabilities, we could produce buildings more smarter, more cost-efficient, and if we analyze that significant drop that has been achieved in the IT sector, which Dr. Anil was mentioning, you could produce homes and housings cheaper. If you apply the same analysis even for transportation, the cost will have significantly down. I mean, buildings are something existed thousands of years. All the technologies are relatively new. We had great buildings from the historical age, from pyramids, from the Paris, the Eiffel Tower. The great city of Hyderabad has its own Charminar and Golconda. These buildings existed. Now it's the engineer's duty to bring in that smartness to make it affordable. Housing is a primary component of a smart city. Singapore had its own challenges. As you're aware, Singapore is limited in the size, but we did create platforms to enable affordable housing. And today, that's one of the components that the 100 smart cities need to think about how to make a smart city. Water and energy. These are the critical elements today. If you know some countries in the Middle East, and particularly Saudi Arabia, today water costs twice than the oil or the petrol. Today, Singapore virtually uses 100% wastewater or the wastewater, and they create new water. Water is not the next oil, but water is the oil, and the water is going to be a critical component. Professor Chari was mentioning about how do we deal with the wastewater treatment, reuse. For example, a simple example would be toilet flushing. We use tremendous amount of water to flush the toilets and so on, but there are technologies that would make it cost efficient. And that's how the components of building a smart cities, cost-wise, would be important. Transport and mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, today, to attend this conference, how many of you use their own cars? I believe for the next event where we have Metropolis, I think people will leave their car in their home and they would come in the metros and the bus transit systems we have. This is creating a smart city. This is creating the components have to be important. The network and the technology is something very critical. Today we heard from the IT minister, the vision of creating digital Telangana, digital Hyderabad is a very essential component. I want to spend more time to really focus on this infrastructure. Of course, the IT and the technology, the dashboards, what my colleagues have present could be done. What's important, though, is the business model of how to deliver these smart cities. Traditionally, the low-cost procurement model existing in the country is not really innovative model. Sometimes the contractors are really targeting to win a job regardless of putting the quality, and it is sometimes cost-driven. But if we have public-private partnerships, and Hyderabad has a great example today, which is GMR Airport, is the first BOT airport in the country. I think the mechanisms to deliver and the change in the basic procurement model will be essential to really create and deliver the smart cities. I believe the program of the Indian government and the government of Telangana to create that smart cities is definitely possible and achievable with the right business model. I have still 2 minutes. Singapore is a smart city. It's a next generation smart city. What makes it smart is a smart citizen, smart governance, smart mobility, and smart energy and smart buildings. Again, all the wastewater is recycled, as I mentioned, the lowest leakages. Today, more than 40% or 50% of water is lost. And that's the key to really think about technologies, bring that smartness into how buildings operate. We contributed as a private sector in building majority of 10 million square feet in Marina Bay and all the resorts and all the metros. Again, district cooling is something which is a very cost efficient in bringing the energy cost. Today, this building, which we are, uses traditional air conditioning, which is more costly. District cooling is the future, and that's how these components tie into how we bring smart buildings. Green buildings, the environment was not a big issue previously, but today, environment is the top priority. And bringing sustainability, bringing our future generation, giving them the environmental consciousness is the key thing which we have to think. I will just take 2 minutes from you, Professor Chari. Some of the examples.
We have an operational problem which we didn't realize. The room has to be vacated for next session at a particular time. So that's why my worry is. Thank you.
I'll just quickly go over. Not only Singapore, we've worked in several international places. This is the Prince Sultan Cultural Center, King Abdullah Financial District, which is the largest. Again, this is an experience the time doesn't permit to talk about, but in Australia, which is a PPP kind of project. And I think the public and private are the essential partners to deliver that 100 smart cities, various riverfront development, various industrial technology parks. In summary, we are, as a government, we're very keen to participate in this project, and I believe the great city of Hyderabad will definitely, in the next conference, have a smartness into this. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. It's rather unfortunate that we had to rush. All these presentations would be made available to the delegates. They will be uploaded on the website shortly, so that you don't miss out the contents of these fabulous presentations. Thank you very much. We'll move to the next speaker, Mr. Surjit Bhattacharjee. There's an operational issue, as I said. We need to vacate this hall for the next session, so I would really request you if you can
cooperate and cut down the presentation, give the salient features in the 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, I think that's very tough. I'll try to manage somehow. Very good afternoon to all. This talk is supposed to be delivered by my CEO, Mr. Vijay Gupta, who got stuck in the overseas assignments. So still, I thank the organizers for giving us a chance to be here, a part of the show. I've been attending all the sessions here mostly, and I must say that there are a lot of takeaways from here. And soft tech, as we are pressed for time, I'll just come to the point, basically. Like soft tech, we are in the architectural, engineering, and construction industry. And we are pioneer in providing solutions for designs, engineering, and engineering processes. Now, I'd like to keep, and our company also believes that we do take things at a time and, go one step to another step. So when we thought about smart cities, the first thing that came to our mind is buildings. We had products for building designs, and then that did so well. It was taken over by a UK-based company, CSC World. Now, the building has got so many things to do, as you know, starting from the basic inception of planning to, the town planning. It's connected to the other services, facility services, and it opens up the whole area of, management of, the services and all. So we thought, we'd just take one step at a time, as I said. And the first step, we thought, is to go ahead with a solution development where we enable the authorities and also the stakeholders, other stakeholders, the architects and the citizens, to come to a common platform and have all the details that they need to have and for any building plan approvals, and finally the speedy approval process. So keeping what we were always talking about, that the citizens are the prime importance. So we have developed a product called Auto DCR, and I want to share our experience in terms of the smart city in India. So it's a solution which automates building plan approval, scrutiny, and approval management system. And we didn't realize before getting into this that we have broad challenges. The rapid urbanization, it puts pressure. When we have a tool, people expectation goes up. And there are pressure for faster approvals. The bylaws for the different authorities are complex. They're interpreted in various ways by the various engineers. There are manual processes which cannot be eliminated totally. So, there are, these have to be also taken care of. Like, the visibility of the progress of the proposal is also not there. People have to come to office and the municipal offices and, and they say, okay, today we are having some other business, so you come back tomorrow or something like that. So all these things are there. So all that happened for a reduced collection of fees. These are the negative impact. And the expectation of the different stakeholders and the citizens, we thought that it should be the first come, first served basis, uniform interpretation of bylaws, and it is uploaded on the side of the authorities. And when we read a legal document, like when we have to read a document, that we can understand that. It's not very complex, but if you don't have the thing in front of you, you will not be able to understand or give your opinion. So it's there. It's a web solution, so it's anytime, anywhere. Simplified process and procedure. For the architects, they get alerts, SMS, emails, and the status of the proposals. And the ULBs, they have the consistency in interpretation of rules and generation of regular, MIS reports on the go basis. And most of them are as per the requirements of the JN and URM. report style. And all the thing that happens, the most important stuff is the storage of the data. We have been talking about handling of big data today in the morning. This is also a tool which will takes care of that. So there are alerts, as I said. Now, expectations for e-governance solutions. There is an, okay? Okay, then I'll have to jump few slides, but 5 minutes is too small for me.
It's 10 minutes, right?
See, we found that in the process, there is a crucial time lost in manual processes. And this is where we worked on and developed a product, which is AutoDCR, which is an innovative solution which reads CAD drawings, maps with the bylaws, and produces the variance reports. And as I've already said, that it enables collaborations and roles and responsibilities are as defined, so the accountability is there, the file is getting stuck, everything is on a real-time basis and recorded. I think I'll skip this one also. The architects submit online drawings. They can view the status. And the citizens also not the architects, but the owner of the property can also have a look at that, what's the status. And the ULBs, they do the verification of documents, visit the sites, prepare the drawing approvals, and go ahead with that. So as I said, uniformity and standardization is done with the process, good governance, better quality of services, and accountability. There are a whole lot of benefits for the citizens and the corporations. I think it will be a repetition if everybody knows now. So this is the most, I think, the important area that we can just have a look at it. I've come 2 slides for 2 case studies. This is the product at a Prem-Preach-Inward Municipal Corporation. We have 2 options here with an OPEX model and a CAPEX model. This is the CAPEX model where the software is delivered and the ULB the engineers are working on that. They're themselves managing it and working it out. So as we see from the various graphs here, that the number of applications have gone up, number of approvals have gone up, number of rejections have come down because you get to know all the, the variants at one point of time. You don't really come back again and again that this is not done, this is to be again changed or whatever. So you get that. And the time of approval drastically has come down over the period from 2009 to 14, as you can see. And of course, when you have more approvals, you have more collections for the revenue. Another case study, which is Indore Municipal Corporation. This is a public-private participation model. Here, they used to have 30 to 60 days of time required for a proposal to be passed, but with this solution, they are able to do that within 21 days, but doing the technical scrutiny within 2 days' time. And as you can see here, the time over the period of time 2011, where we started, from November to March, the revenue generation was 6.5 crores, which grew up to 20.09 crores up to September, and it's going up. Yeah, we faced few challenges. Like there were resistance from the municipalities, the people there, but at the top level, they were determined to go ahead. And we have to train them. What we did, we kept on having training sessions, and people then understood that there are a lot of things that are good in it, and they benefit out of that. And it is the citizens, they're coming back less in the number of times, getting things done. So I think it's difficult to go
Thank you, sir.
fast.
Thank you very much.
Just 1 minute. These are the awards and applause that we have received, and it has been, our product has been selected as the best practice for building plan approvals. And we participated in the business school of, the School of Planning and Architecture in London, and we got this World Leadership Award also in 2007. About 40 municipalities and corporations, development authorities today uses our program. We have a long way to go. We are trying to incorporate GI's technologies, as well as we are working on the beam technologies, which will make it more useful, and it will be really good for the
Thank you.
e-governance system.
Thank you very much. It's actually one of the very fascinating experience of building approval system, which is such a complex subject, gets simplified from a citizen's perspective. As I said, it's increasing the degree of separation between the service provider and the citizen, because thereby the processing speeds can be improved. Thank you very much, sir. Sorry again for rushing the presentation. Now we move to the next speaker, Mr. Subramaniam. He is advisor to the Administrative Staff College of India on the smart cities. So over to Subramaniam. He has both corporate sector experience as well as academic experience. I again request you, since I come from the same institution, I take the liberty of reducing your time further to 5 minutes.
I would like to take only 2.5 minutes, because already he has taken 2.5 more minutes. Okay. There's just some few, I just have 3 points which I thought were the primary things that I wanted to share with all of you. One is that there's a very interesting thought that came out there. The 19th century was the century of empires, the 20th century was the century of nation states, and the 21st will be the century of cities. It's a very beautiful thought where we see a transition in the socio-political framework of the entire world. It's a global transition that we are observing. That means that's one dimension. And if you look at this model, there's been a huge transition in technology from mere IT to IT with emerging technologies combined and taking forward something for the betterment of the humanity. When you get these two together, there's a significant convergence. There's an inflection point between the socio-economic change and also the technology change which is coming together. And I think that is the impetus for the smart city. So I wouldn't like to really get into the definitions, but I would just like to pinpoint some of the issues which have been raised in the morning. There's a very beautiful sentence or a thought that Anil Menon has left us all with. Is it a new dawn or a false beginning? This is a fear that most of us in India have today because of these issues that we have. Most cities grew than planned. Different cities have different needs because of their geographic locations, climatic conditions, access to natural resources. We are unique, we are different. We too have done it. This is another major problem that we have. Most cities have some initiative or the other where they bring technology and infrastructure together and they say, we too have done it, but they wouldn't look at it as a comprehensive context as to how to go about. Then city management is with multiple institutions. This is one place I think we can learn a lot from what the best practices have been. That if you go to Barcelona and you had the deputy mayor sitting here very clearly saying that I wear the stars and I'm responsible for it. And here in a city, if you want to do something, even if you want to bring a whole lot of institutions together, there's no one anchoring point around this happens. So I think the first step more so in building the smart city should be in trying to create that. Now, growth of the infrastructure is not commensurate to the growth of the population, so the demand and the supply gap that you have. Now, these are some questions from most cities. I can very clearly say there are a lot of people who are sitting here have these questions at the back of mind. They say, these are fantastic examples that are out here. They're wonderful things that are done globally. Can we do it? Are we capable of doing it? We are not even providing the basic amenities. How can we build smart cities? There's one question. I'm sure most of us would be having this. We do not have enough resources to ensure that the basic needs are provided to every citizen. Where is the money to make the smart city? This is another. We are yet to hear the voice of the citizen. Where is the possibility of the smart inclusive governance? Then we have so many stakeholders with no one anchor for decision making. Is it not difficult to bring silos together and make them smart? We have our unique problems. How can a single smart protocol solve them? So this is a very important question, sir. Then we can build a new smart city. How is it possible? How is it possible to make hundreds of years old cities smart? We can make something smart provided we have a system that is predictable, available, confirming. Are we there? So these are the questions I'm sure all of us must be having. And I presume it is in that context, I would say we have two solutions. One is that India, unlike every other nation, has a great advantage called the late mover advantage. We always talk about early mover advantages. Here we have a late mover advantage where we learn from all the experiments of others, and we are pretty tech savvy as a nation, so we leapfrog way ahead of others. Just a minute more, Chari sir, right? And what is it that we are talking about is, when you look at the mobile revolution, you have the mobile revolution leapfrog much faster than any other communication mechanism that we have, and that's because we were the late movers in that space. Now, last but not the least, I would request, coming from a academic background and also an industry background, we have what we call the CMM model, what we call the maturity models that we talk about. Can't we create a smartness maturity model, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and define a framework where every city is identified in which level it belongs, and provide a roadmap for every city to become a level 5 SMM certified city? I think those are the two ideas that I would like to echo. We have the advantage of late mover, and we can create an SMM framework which can be a protocol for all ranges of cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Subramaniam, for really sticking to the time and also giving very focused suggestions for the 100 Smart City program of Government of India. Now we move to the next presentation, which is from Mr. Sudhir Agarwal from Oracle. He's the Senior Director, Public Sector, and we had the opportunity of listening to Oracle in two verticals, so I'm requesting him to again give some specific recommendations for the Smart City program of Government of India rather than going through.
I will avoid using my presentation. In this room, all those who live in India, who all you believe that we live in quasi-smart city, please raise your hand shamelessly. We live in quasi-smart city, because there is nothing like smart city as a definition. Because if I am able to get a gas today at home without a cylinder coming to my house, this is smart city. If I am able to pay property tax, that's part of smart city. That's all part of smart city, and that's what we were saying. If you have level 1, level 2, level 3, I think we should start believing that we are living in some kind of smart city, and we have to take it to the next stage. So that's the first point. Second, what Dr. Ravindran asked a point about the change. One government doing and the other government continuing. I think today in the country, my understanding is this, my more personal, that we have our political parties today. They go, the reforms have gone beyond political parties, because today, if you look at the current government in India, most of the schemes and policies of the previous government, this new government is continuing. It is all the matter of, I think, the way they look at it, they want to relook at it, and they want to implement it. So I think the focus is there, but I think continuity of policy is there in the country, and which is very critical from smart city perspective also, because this adds to that. And while I'm an IT guy, but the role of IT in any change is always in single digit, be it smart city or any city. It is all the change management, I think, is the real crux there. 100 smart city, all of us should see this is a start. We shouldn't look this as an end, and this is an opportunity. So whatever we do today, we should look at from beyond 100 smart city perspective, because from sustainability and building on that, I think that will be critical. And today, Gen Y, the way they behave, the way they expect, the way they interact, at least I can take my own example. My son, when he can go on his own, get his driving license without paying a single penny and come back home and takes his sister after a year to get the driving license, I call it a part of smart city. Because that's what you and me, we have to pay that money to the guy to get the driving license. That's all part of smart city. So I think we should start believing that we are living in quasi-smart cities, and we have to take it to the smart cities. The presentation which I was carrying as because I come from IT company, I'm saying, sir, you're here. We should look at cloud as as a real solution for smart city. For simple reason, because if you look at most of the applications which go into smart city, whole lot of applications are horizontal in nature, and they can be adapted through the cloud. And also the cloud addresses one significant challenge. Today the significant challenge in government structure is the procurement, time which is taken from 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years. So if you can build cloud, so bring solutions on cloud, and you commoditize the IT part into that, then I think project will move much faster. Now, I'm not able to, why I didn't open the slides, because there I would have spoken more about cloud solutions and all that. That presentation is available to all of you. And I would think we all of should celebrate that smart cities actually is an opportunity to create value for our society. A new dimension, new way of thinking and creating a society, value for our society, which we can give it back. And last point for the industry should look, this 100 smart city is a pie. We should look, this whole smart city as a cake, not as a pie, and then, mess with the projects. We should look at a pie and we should have patience and get into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir Agarwal sir, because I respect that you didn't go through the presentation, but clearly gave a very focused advice how the smart city program should evolve. Now we move to the next presentation of Mr. Alberto Martin Torres. He's coming from the Smart City Expo World Congress, which is based out of Barcelona, and they organize every year annual Smart City Expo. We had the opportunity of listening to you yesterday, so I request you to be really brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chari. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I don't know if 5 minutes will be enough, but I'll do my best. Dear friends, it's a pleasure to be here today. I used to live in India some years ago in Mumbai, so to be back in India and participate in a congress like this and to be able to contribute to the improvement of cities in India is a real privilege. Now, we've been reading a lot and hearing a lot about this project of 100 smart cities in India, but there's little information, and I think it's worth asking some questions and trying to provide some answers for them. The first one is whether cities should be built from scratch or perhaps rebuild current cities. I think in some cases building new cities from scratch may be a good idea, but it probably is not the way to go, because on the one hand we won't be solving the problems that current cities already face, and on the other hand we won't be relying on current infrastructure and the current status of cities that already exist. Of course, there are projects that have been very successful in this regard, such as Masdar or Songdo, but I'm afraid they would not be scalable, and particularly in a case like India, it probably doesn't make sense. Usually when we think of cities that have been planned from scratch, we think of cities that were built in countries from the New World, like Brasilia, like Canberra, like Washington, D.C., but India, just like Europe, doesn't seem to be the place where cities that are planned from the very beginning is a good idea. Now, I think there's also some other issues that should be raised. For example, if we build new smart cities, we risk that they might just be for a minority, an elite, because they might be very different from the rest of the cities, and therefore the issue of inclusiveness is raised. We don't want to have two different leagues of cities in India. I think we should all try to have a certain standards for all kind of cities. So again, I think trying to upgrade current cities is probably a better idea. So if we look, for example, at the example of Chandigarh, I think we can learn some lessons from it. It was a success to a great extent, but it was a success because there were a number of reasons that were aligned. On the one hand, it had to be an administrative city, so we're not talking here about an industrial city or a city that needs to help the economy grow around it, and also because of the political situation that was behind it right at the moment when it was created. So, of course, it can be interesting to learn some things for new cities and current cities. For example, how we could work on urbanism and how we can solve certain traffic-related problems. And this is the way I would look at new cities, as pilot projects, basically, from which we can learn lessons that eventually need to be applied to existing cities, which won't disappear no matter how many new cities we build. So let's look, for example, at what Mumbai has done, because this is an example I feel very much close to. I remember when I was living in Mumbai how terrible the traffic was, and I was very happy to read just a few days ago about an article that basically said some new real traffic control systems have been implemented, thus reducing not just the energy that the city needs to to spend on, but most importantly, the congestion times and the mobility problems that the city has. So maybe this doesn't make for such bold and grand headlines, but at the end of the day, it's what really makes a difference in citizens' life. And so I would advocate for this kind of smaller initiatives that actually have a real impact on people. If we also talk about satellite cities, which has been a topic that has been broadly discussed, I think they're sometimes necessary because certain cities just grow so much that inevitably a metropolitan area needs to also exist around them. But I would say that it's a better idea trying to grow and develop the second-tier cities, cities that are perhaps 1, 2, 3 million people. So there's still room for growth, room for expansion, and probably such growth will be easily implemented. In fact, if we compare the case of India with the case of China, we see that there's only 41+ million cities, whereas in China it's 160. So that just gives an idea of how great an opportunity this kind of cities can be for the smart cities that we want to build in India. The topic of this session is also called Way Forward Cooperation, but I think cooperation is probably the second step. The first step should be coordination. Coordination among the cities and coordination between the different levels of the administration. What we need here is to decide which are the strategic areas in India that should foster the creation or the upgrading of cities so that they become smarter. So we should look at it from an industrial standpoint, see which kind of clusters we can create, and therefore, once we have this in place, then we can let the public and the private sector cooperate, and we can also let the cities cooperate with each other so that synergies are created between the different industrial clusters that take place among the country. Sure, just give me 2 minutes and I'll be done. Dolera is a good example, I think, of what a smart city shouldn't be. I've been reading about Dolera because it's one of the few examples of the new smart cities that are being planned. And it's certainly a very interesting case. It basically pretends to become a special administrative region where business opportunities can be fostered because of its special regime. Now, this is legitimate, this might be necessary, but that's not a smart city. Smart city needs a holistic approach, and I think this focuses too much on the economic side of things. So when we think of smart cities, let's keep that in mind. So to sum it up, I think it's important to have a realistic approach. We need to know that it's all right to be ambitious. We need to be ambitious. We need to have grand goals, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge India's reality and what the basic priorities should be, which are the endemic problems that current cities face today, and we should be solving that before anything else. And also, we should be very fair and rigorous when selecting which areas and which cities need to be the target of our strategy. Just 2 words about what we do in Barcelona. We have this Smart City Expo World Congress every year. This is going to be the 4th edition in November. Pretty much all stakeholders will be there. So I would be very happy to welcome you all in Barcelona. If you have any questions about it, I'll be happy to answer to them after the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very, again, very focused recommendations for Indian Smart City program. In fact, Mr. Torres has explained Smart City Expo is scheduled in November. He would explain it. A lot of interesting ideas are shared. I had benefited immensely from that expo. We move to the last speaker, but not the least, Professor Carlos Moreno. I think we need translation. I request the translator to switch over to French. Is that right, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I born in Colombia, in French. I speak now in French. Ma présentation concerne le défi de la ville de demain avec des exemples sur Paris. Je vais aller rapidement parce que j'ai peu de temps. Nous avons un monde qui change. En moins de 5 ans, nous avons multiplié par 4 le nombre d'habitants sur la planète, mais en même temps, nous avons mis la planète en danger en dépassant les 400 ppm de CO2. Hier, le professeur Carlo Ratti parlait de la ville sensible, de la ville fragile. Je vais parler de Smart Cities comme la ville fragile, la ville sensible. Je rappelle que la ville, ce n'est pas une question technologique, c'est avant tout un lieu de vie et c'est un lieu de partage. La ville est un espace pour tous. La ville de demain, pour moi, elle est dans la convergence des trois éléments principaux, la social inclusion, la urban intelligence et la technological innovation. C'est les trois qui font que la ville et les citoyens soient intelligents. Pour moi, l'intelligence, elle n'est pas dans la ville, elle est dans les citoyens. Et la technologie est au service de l'inclusion sociale et elle est au service de l'innovation urbaine pour que la ville soit repensée au XXIe siècle. On a déjà parlé de la concentration humaine avec des mégalopoles. 30% de la population est à Metropolis avec 160 villes. Une urbanisation très forte. Si on met Tokyo sur le Royaume-Uni, c'est 2/3 du territoire, une ville de 30 millions d'habitants. Une ville et l'autorité d'une ville est plus puissante parfois qu'un Premier ministre d'un pays. La ville est un lieu de vie collectif fragile, que ce soit tous les jours ou que ce soit lors de moments que nous ne connaissons pas. La ville est soumise aux aléas. La ville est très vulnérable. Nous avons du mal à prédire tout ce qui peut se passer dans la ville. Peu de choses suffisent pour que la ville change sa manière de se comporter à un instant donné. La qualité de vie dans le monde entier, la pollution du nord au sud, de l'est à l'ouest de la planète, la pollution, la qualité de l'air est une préoccupation tous les jours. Car l'urbanisation a amené les trafics motorisés, les véhicules, les réseaux de chaleur et de froid pour se chauffer de manière dans les villes, et les bâtiments qui consomment beaucoup d'énergie et qui sont construits depuis longtemps. Ces trois éléments font que la qualité de l'air soit un problème systémique dans la plupart des villes au monde. Ces photos sont prises un peu partout. La ville, elle est vulnérable. À Paris, nous avons eu, il y a 5 ans, 10 000 morts de personnes seniors par une vague de chaleur qui s'est produite. Et sur ce schéma-là, on voit au centre la mortalité qu'il y a eu dans Paris par les grands bâtiments qui créent des canyons, des lieux dans lesquels la chaleur se concentre plus et les personnes fragiles, les personnes seniors, les personnes en difficulté sociale ont été les premières victimes. La ville est un lieu dans lequel il n'y a pas d'uniformité. Il y a beaucoup de fractures dans la ville. Dans une ville, il peut y avoir plusieurs villes. Même à Paris, la ville la plus visitée au monde, il y a plusieurs Paris. Les Paris du Nord ouvriers, les Paris de l'Ouest riches, les Paris de l'Est des cadres qui habitent dans des maisons avec des jardins, les Paris du milieu de bureaux, les Paris aujourd'hui en reconstruction avec les grands building corporate. Une ville, ce n'est pas la ville. Une ville, c'est plusieurs manières de vivre qui obéissent à des fractures de diverses natures. C'est pour ça que les challenges des City of Tomorrow, les vrais challenges, c'est 5 éléments qu'on trouve dans toutes les villes du monde. Un challenge social, un challenge économique, un challenge culturel, écologique et des résiliences. Nous avons, je n'aurai pas le temps, j'avais préparé pour 2 minutes, je n'aurai pas le temps. Nous avons aujourd'hui les défis pour les villes de demain, du climat, des risques, les nouvelles maladies urbaines, la dengue, l'Ebola, les virus, des maladies que nous ne connaissions pas il y a 20 ans. Aujourd'hui, on la connaît parce que les réchauffements climatiques créent des vecteurs de propagation des maladies qui affectent des zones urbaines. Aujourd'hui, en Europe, nous connaissons des maladies tropicales qu'on ne connaissait pas avant et la diffusion urbaine est très importante. L'énergie dans les villes est consommée à 75% aujourd'hui par rapport aux besoins. Le Smart City est avant tout une vision transversale de l'innovation. Nous devons travailler pour une ville durable. Comme disait Abdul Kalam hier, il faut aller vers une ville post-carbone durable. J'ai plaide dans tous les lieux de la planète où je suis invité, pratiquement toutes les semaines, non pas pour une transition énergétique, non pas pour une transition digitale, je plaide pour qu'on fasse une transition urbaine, pour que la vie dans la ville corresponde à mieux vivre ensemble, pour que les inégalités dans la ville de demain soient mieux gérées, parce que la ville demande avant tout une meilleure qualité de vie pour les citoyens. Le solaire à Paris, la géothermie avec des sources d'eau chaude. Nous récupérons à Paris les eaux usées qui ont de la chaleur et nous les remontons en surface. Nous créons de la chaleur sur des rejets des eaux usées. Nous avons de la mobilité, de l'autopartage, nous avons des services pour les citoyens, nous avons des plateformes qui gèrent divers types de services dans la ville, mais le but essentiel, c'est que la technologie serve aux citoyens pour que les plateformes des services sociaux, communautaires, économiques, des voisinages, des quartiers, les seniors, les enfants, permettent à chacun de trouver de nouveaux services et de nouveaux usages. La ville doit être une ville plateforme. La ville doit offrir de la sécurité. La ville doit offrir de la qualité dans les transports. La ville doit offrir qu'on soit fier de son territoire, qu'on soit fier de son patrimoine, que le patrimoine historique des villes, parfois elles sont millénaires. En Asie, nous avons des villes qui remontent à des milliers d'années. Même si en France, nos villes remontent à 300 années, il faut être fier de son patrimoine, de sa ville. Seulement si on est fier de sa ville, on est prêt à s'investir pour le transformer. Le problème principal de l'intelligence urbaine des Smart Cities, c'est la acceptabilité sociale, que j'accepte et je sois fier de vivre dans ma ville, quel que soit l'endroit où je suis. Si on est fier de sa ville, alors on peut affronter les défis sociaux, économiques, culturels, écologiques et de la résilience pour que les villes d'aujourd'hui, demain, soient des villes plateformes, non pas pour faire des démonstrateurs ou des vitrines pour quelques-uns, mais pour que ce soit une ville dans laquelle les maximums de nouveaux services soient créés pour le maximum de personnes. Ça commence par l'éducation, par la formation, par la culture. Et la technologie est un outil. La technologie, ce n'est pas une fin en soi. Une ville hyper connectée peut donner lieu à des citoyens zombies geeks. Une ville hyper connectée doit donner lieu à des digital citizens, des social digital citizens. C'est la chose essentielle pour que on puisse bâtir aujourd'hui la ville de demain au XXe siècle avec la technologie au service de l'inclusion sociale et de la rénovation urbaine. Merci.
Professor Carlo, thank you very much. He is a scientific advisor to the government. Thank you very much for this very rapid session. We appreciate, sir. Social acceptability of any program is a key, success factor, and Professor Carlos articulated that aspect much more strongly than anyone else. I mean, that is, I think, the crux of the whole issue. How do we ensure that society at large accept this change, the dramatic change that we are all suggesting to go through, but for the betterment? Thank you very much. We have a serious problem, that is Q&A. Unfortunately, we cannot take questions at this stage because of the administrative reasons. This hall has to be vacated and it has to be made available for something else. What we intend to do is to capture all the points that came out during the deliberations. We are actually recording them online, as well as we are recording. By end of today, we will have the summary online of these deliberations, but also we are making a comprehensive proceedings of this particular session so that it is made available for all the delegates, and you would also have access to the contact details of all the speakers, eminent panelists here, so that one can get in touch with them for further interactions. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to profoundly thank all the panelists for taking out their time and then contributing to this very important discussion
recommendation, which I believe the Government of India would immensely value and take note of. We would be, as I said from the beginning, we will record all these proceedings and pass on to Government of India, as it said, that the program, Smart City program is under evolution, and some of these recommendations could be of some value. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for coming out the short notice, but these, I hope, these deliberations would have been of some value. Thank you very much, all the audience, for your participation. Thank you very much. A big round of applause.